Good evening, LBC Radio. This is Corey Rosen with the Story Podcast. Today I have a wonderful guest with me, Mr. Ruddy Turnstone.
Hola.
Ruddy Turnstone is the project of songwriter Chris Kolkoski. Chris played bass in The Crossline before moving to Virginia and joining No Fault of Their Own as the lead singer. Meanwhile, he was playing solo under the name Jasper the Tourist, and later on he moved back to Pennsylvania and continued with the moniker Jasper the Tourist. After retiring that project, Chris started playing under the new name, Ruddy Turnstone. Chris has released a handful of singles under the Ruddy Turnstone moniker. A lot of people call it Rudy, but it's Ruddy, like the bird. The collaborator hip hop. Chris has released a handful of singles under the Ruddy Turnstone moniker, a collaborative hip hop EP with New Jersey rapper FaZe as his debut album, Full Moon Carnival, which is a stripped down acoustic concept album. Mr. Ruddy, how are you doing today?
Hey, Corey. Good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm really excited. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. One thing I definitely want to talk about first is what inspired you to get started with music in general?
Sure. I was kind of a late bloomer, actually. When I was a kid, I was very shy, just in general, especially when it came to anything performance-oriented. So if we had to do any kind of like school shows or whatever, it was always very nerve-wracking for me. I was like afraid to sing when anybody could hear me, and I didn't play an instrument. I used to fiddle around on my grandfather's Casio keyboard sometimes, and I listened to a lot of classical music actually as a kid. I was like afraid of rock music, but that obviously all changed when I got older. But so as I got into my teens, I started to grow more of an appreciation for pop and rock music and started to really get into it. It was like a complete 180. So
what do you think was the first album or like the first song that you listened to that really just popped it all off for you?
It was Bittersweet Symphony by The Verve.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I was in like 7th grade, I think, when that song came out, and it just blew my mind that was a song that could make it on the top 40. And I bought that was like the first album that I bought too, and I just listened to it so much, and then I was a convert from that point on. Still love that record.
Every time I listen to it, it almost gets to the point of like talk about Canon and D.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost at that point of annoyance to me. Because it's just like it's the same thing.
But you can't get out of your head.
You can't get out of your head.
But it was the fact that it was. Like, I think because I liked classical music as a kid, and like hearing the string section incorporated into a rock song was really cool, and it just sounded so big, and there were so many layers. And
it's one of 2 songs I know on the violin.
Yeah,
that being talk about Canon.
So there you go. But then in high school, I met this guy who was a guitar player, and we became pretty good friends. He was kind of a weird, eccentric dude, and he convinced me to. And I started singing with him a little bit, like we would write some songs together. But I still couldn't play an instrument, so he convinced me to try bass. So I bought a cheap bass, and I taught myself how to play. And a few years later, we started a band called The Crossline. This was after high school. And I played bass in that band, and I did write like probably about half of the songs.
Yeah?
It was kind of like a Fleetwood Mac situation where every member of the band would write lyrics and or music.
That's cool.
Yeah. It was a weird mix because it was my friend Scott and myself, and we shared some of the same influences, but he was more into like the metal side of things than I was. I was more of a like indie and pop guy, not pop like NSYNC pop, but like pop song structure kind of stuff. Right. And then we had a death metal drummer and a female country singer. So
that is the biggest. That is a hodgepodge and a half.
yeah, and we were basically like an alternative metal band with a few indie-ish songs and punk influenced songs. So it was a short ride with that band. We did a 7-song EP, and it came out great. But the personalities were just too much. Scott and I just couldn't get along. Katie, who was our singer, she was kind of in and out of the band, and we just couldn't. It was just too much. To be honest with you, my memory of that era is kind of like a blur.
Gotcha.
So but it just kind of fell apart after the release of the EP, ironically. So I'm sure there are boxes of that thing sitting in our drummer's attic still to this day. So that project broke up, but Scott and I still, wrote together sometimes.
That's cool.
But from that point on, like when we were in the cross line, I started to teach myself guitar as well. And when that band ended, I continued on and started what would later be known as Jasper the Tourist. So that was my first solo project. I was basically writing songs as I was learning to play the guitar. So I never actually learned. I mean, I don't know how to read music or anything. I never had a lesson. Everything I do is by ear. So I kind of developed my own unique style on guitar because of that. But I do still feel limited sometimes.
Right.
Yeah, but
That's interesting. I feel limited in the fact that I have learned music, like classically learned music as an education. So I feel limited in that aspect. That I'm not
the
just
opposite.
going.
Yeah.
Well, I can play by ear, obviously. I mean,
Right, yeah.
I go out to
But it's like, do you
play.
feel like you didn't like get to explore your own style or something because you were
A little bit. I definitely I know for a fact I have my own style, but it's more of that I'm not. My mind isn't open to all of the like for example, like the chord progressions that you came up with are like chord progressions I would have never thought of,
Yeah,
or never in my mind put together.
right.
And not that it's like ridiculous or anything. It's just that it's so out of norm from the musical, like general music theory, that it just like, oh, it works, but I never thought about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is something that I kind of take pride in,
Oh, yeah, for
because it's
sure.
like I'm just another guy with an acoustic guitar, and like, which the only reason that's the case is because that's what I have to work with. I don't really have a band, and
Yet.
well, I'm kind of trying to work on it, but we'll see where that goes. But yeah, that's just been my tool, is an acoustic guitar, basically. And I never had a lot of money to spend on extra instruments or anything, or my own recording equipment. So I have to keep it interesting for both myself and the audience, So I come up with things that I think sound interesting, or at least have interesting lyrics. So,
Yeah. So, how would you say that you create songs? What is the best explanation of your creation process?
Usually it's music first.
Yeah?
Yeah. So it's just a matter of like, when I get time to sit down with the guitar and I just start messing around, and, when I start rolling with something that sounds good, I'll put it on a voice memo. And sometimes I'll be inspired and have an idea for a lyric right away, and I'll start to write it. Other times I'll just leave it there on the phone for a while, and then I'll revisit it and then tackle either finishing the music or writing the lyrics to it.
I'm starting to learn that voice memos is the way to go.
Yeah.
For all things.
Yeah, especially because I have these ideas for melodies sometimes too, like in addition to just like sitting down with the guitar and coming up with stuff. Like a lot of the times when I'm driving or when I'm in the shower, or times when like I can shut my brain down a little bit, I'll get ideas for melodies or lyrics.
Right.
And so I'll just come to a stoplight, whip out the phone, whistle the melody or recite the lyrics into the phone so I don't forget them, since I can't write them down, So it is useful. Yeah.
Definitely useful. I've been using them a lot lately because my monkey brain goes away every. Well, it's just like a fact that it's hard to remember something after 7 seconds. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's like a clinically proven study that if you can remember something within like 7 seconds of like afterthought,
Mm-hmm.
that's impressive. I can barely remember like anything after 7 seconds because my brain is going everywhere unless I know it.
Yeah, and I've lost great ideas because I just didn't get there in time. You know what I
Right?
mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, and sometimes the same thing happens with lyrical ideas. Like I'll just have often that's where at least these days, the past few years, I'll like go from a title, like so I'll come up with a cool title, something that sounds interesting to me and not necessarily have an idea of where that is going to go, but then sit down and write something just based on that title. So, yeah, that's a way that it happens sometimes too.
I've done that way a few times. I thought of a good concept and then I just kind of like let it flow by, and then
Mhm.
I look back at it. I'm like, huh, I could do something with that.
Mhm.
Or I had an Instagram page that I would literally just dedicate to sound like stuff I played on the piano or guitar, and
Mhm.
that's like that was my storage system really. But also just to kind of share it with like the public, see what people thought about it, and because I think I make good things,
Yeah.
good sounding things. So I guess in a way that I've always wanted to share music in one aspect or another, and
Mhm.
I feel like it's a lot of fun to share the process of making things because the way I start was is with the music too, or sometimes I will literally just write out, or what I've done recently is I've just when I've had like a lot of thoughts on something, I just blurt out all the thoughts and then pick and choose from there
Mhm.
what sticks and what doesn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you have to do some testing, trial runs, figure out what works. Yeah, it's interesting because everybody has a very different process for doing it.
Yeah, it's very fun to figure out because there are some people who can't write lyrics without music, and some of those people can't write music.
Right.
So it's
That's
it's
true.
yeah, some people's creative process demands music made
Mhm.
for them, or another they demand like Elton John and his songwriter Bernie. I
Bernie
think
Taupin,
Bernie
yeah.
Taupin, yeah.
Mhm.
Like Bernie Taupin would make all the lyrics, and then Elton John would turn those into songs.
Right.
And there was no Bernie asking him, "Hey, we should make this kind of sound." At least not to my knowledge.
Yeah.
It was for the most part that Elton John was solely the music writer
Mhm.
and Bernie was solely the
The
lyrics writer,
lyricist.
lyricist. Yeah.
So he wrote the lyrics before the music was ever even conceived.
Yes.
I didn't know that. See, I think that's challenging. I've only done that a few times ever, and I've written over 100 songs. I think um, I find that to be more challenging because
Oh, absolutely.
I like the lyrics. I'm kind of a vibes guy, so I feel like
Mm.
the lyrics kind of have to like
Match the music.
yeah, and I mean you can do it the other way around, but it's like structurally that can get funky sometimes. I feel like
Well, that explains why a lot of Elton John songs are structurally funky.
yeah, yeah, right.
But in a good way, in an
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
great way. And that's not to knock Elton John. Anyone who's ever listened to this podcast knows I love Elton John. But it's definitely harder because you have to write it from a poetry standpoint,
Mhm.
like a strictly poetry standpoint. Because it had unless you want a funky structure, because songwriting is it's just uh sung poetry
Yeah.
at some point, and it's I have only done it once, and it was really interesting for sure, but I don't like it.
Yeah, it's not my favorite way to approach things. I mean, if I really had to do it, then I could do it, but I definitely prefer
I
to have
mhm.
a musical template first.
I definitely did it just to experiment with it, not not for any other reason. Because I give more power to those who can do it than I. I'd much rather have lyrics given to me sometimes and make
Mhm.
music for that. I can do that all day and night. But in order just to write lyrics of something that's like good and decent
Mhm.
on its own without music is so hard.
Yeah.
I've had to do it for my musical, like where I've written lyrics and then added music to it. But you know that's easier because I already have like the main over focus in you know
Right.
in my mind. But otherwise, yeah, it's really hard. So the creation process is it's difficult sometimes, or some processes are difficult for others to understand.
Yeah.
Um,
And I'll go through phases like where I'm very productive and I've just got stuff flowing like that. And then other times where there's just nothing. And
mm.
there's really no rhyme or reason to it, I find.
Yeah, it really just depends on your creativity flow and
Mm-hmm.
how you're feeling, and oftentimes it's really up down to emotion, of like you know what feelings are you feeling? Are you feeling open, or are you feeling closed off?
Mm-hmm.
Are you like is writer's block is a whole conversation we can have about it too.
Oh, yeah, I struggle with it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and especially if you're just writing half of a song and then leaving it up. That's the problem I had, and we kind of talked about this with Nathan Arndt a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Is that I would write songs, and I've always felt like the second verse was just not as good as the. But that's because
Mm-hmm.
I only had a verse and a chorus in me.
Right, and you feel like that next one is kind of forced.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. That's when you use the old repeat the first
yeah, right,
first
right.
trick.
Yeah, but if I did that, all my songs would be the same too. It would just be chorus, 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 chorus. It would all just be a refrain at that point. So yeah, I've really realized that in order to like write songs, you should definitely dedicate the time it takes. And that doesn't mean you can always come back to a song.
Mm-hmm.
But make sure you refine it until you are completely satisfied with it.
Yeah, and I've done that with a few. There have been some ideas that I had laying around for years before they were ever complete. And then other songs I've written, no joke, in 10 minutes.
Right.
You know,
Yeah. Exactly.
it's just
yeah.
so bizarre how the whole thing works. Like, yeah, it's like I like have something I had something that sat around for like 7 years once before I completed it.
That's wild.
Yeah, and then I think that same week I had one done. Like I sat down with the guitar and came up with the music real quick, and the lyrics were done in like a half hour, and that was that.
One thing that always surprises me, but it makes total sense to me, is that you know who Steven Schwartz is?
I don't
He
think
wrote
so.
Fiddler on the Roof, Pippin,
Oh, okay.
all the Wicked,
Okay.
and it took him 7 years to write Wicked, and to me that was like, what? That's so long. But
It's a big production, though. You
oh,
know?
well, yeah, well, because when I think about it, I'm like, duh, of course it took him
Mhm.
7 years, but I'm like, wow, that took so long. Like, but yeah, and that's just to say, because something is taking you a long time to figure out, doesn't mean it's gonna be crap.
Right.
And you shouldn't drop something if it takes you forever to work on it either.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a good idea, especially, you know, I've had plenty of bad ones that have sat around for a while, and I'm like, well, I'll get rid of that.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's something that's quality, I'll just let it sit until finally I get that second wind to finish it and have it be what it should be, you know?
Right. So moving on from that topic,
Mm-hmm.
you have a family, right?
Indeed.
We want to start talking about how you deal with your family life and then your music life and then your job life, because you
I wear many hats.
wear many you are a man of many hats
Yes.
and many aliases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as the family thing goes, trying to, you know, be a musician, like have a full-time job, have a child, and be a musician, it's not easy. So like, you know, I've had to compromise. I don't make a lot of money from doing music.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, booking shows, very time consuming.
Very time consuming.
Practicing, very time
Very
consuming.
time-consuming.
Writing, time consuming. I don't have, I mean, maybe an hour at the end of the day to do something.
Right, and have some sort of free time.
Right, and by that point, I'm exhausted, you know.
You don't want
But
to sing.
I do usually try to put a little bit of time into music, at least a couple nights a week. But it really isn't easy. So I'm trying to be a little bit more proactive about booking gigs and whatnot, but that comes with its own challenges as well,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you're not a super established artist and you do something that's not like
Mainstream.
for South Central PA. I'll say
Right. Oh,
that.
yeah, that's
So
fair.
what I do
Yeah.
is a little offbeat compared to I think what a lot of our peers do.
That's fair.
Yeah. So not that I'm complaining about it. It's just the
No,
way it
it's
is.
just the way
It's
it
the way
is.
it is. So
You know,
it makes it a little bit more challenging.
gotta market to your audience.
Right. So yeah, so time is really my biggest enemy because my son is 4 years old, so it's not like I have to put a lot into him, and my wife works a job that pretty much consumes her entire existence.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah, so we're just busy. Um, so it is hard to find the time, but I'm really trying to change that now. I've kind of like that's been a big source of frustration for me over the years, especially since I've had my son. And that's not knocking him or anything. That's just the way it is.
So
But
you want to do more music?
yeah, it's just been
Gotcha.
the challenge of trying to figure out how to balance all that has really gotten me down.
Well,
But I feel like I'm kind of bouncing back from that a little bit.
that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't have a child or a wife or any of those monikers. I have a job, but it's always interesting to me. Like throughout college, especially, was trying to find time to do music.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, I didn't join the gigging scene until last summer. So I'm relatively new to this area or to this new world as it is
Mm-hmm.
as well. But for as a composition major or like a whatever major you are here, you have to dedicate at least like 7 hours
Right.
to, or it's expected of you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so hard when you're trying to have a job, you're trying to pay off your loans, you're trying to pay, you're trying to
Yeah.
eat.
Yeah, a lot of it comes back down to just money and
Mhm.
basic survival. So, you have to prioritize. And I'm happiest when I'm doing something with music.
Gotcha.
That's when I'm in my zone. So when I have to kind of push that to the bottom of the priority list,
It makes you mad.
it gets me down. Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, like I said, I think I'm figuring out kind of how to balance things a little bit better. And hopefully that, more opportunities come to fruition.
Has your wife ever been angry with you about how maybe you're trying to prioritize music at all?
No, not at
No?
all.
That's good.
No, I mean she's very supportive. I mean, I don't get out and do stuff as much as I'd like because I don't want to be leaving every
Right.
night.
Right. No, I understand.
So I do like an open mic a week, if that, just to get out and stay fresh and talk to people and stuff and make. You okay?
Wrong pipe.
Yeah, I get you.
Wrong pipe.
And network and all that stuff because that's important.
Uh huh.
So, and that's how you get more shows. You go to things like that. You do the open mics and you talk to people and you make connections and do things like this.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, no, she's never angry about it. As a matter of fact, especially lately, she's been very supportive of me trying to like make it more of a priority because I haven't really done much of that in the past.
Mm. That's good.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I know that the more that like I'm gone and putting energy into this, that's
Less
of course
time.
that's going to be more of a stressor on her and my son as well. So,
Right.
But we do all right, all things considered. We're figuring it out. So,
That's good because I don't know if you've listened to any of the shows, but I've talked about my dad,
mhm.
where he wasn't the best at balancing life at all. But that it's good to know that you're conscious of it at least. Because there's a lot of people who just like screw it, I'm gonna go play at the bar tonight, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
And it's almost their escape from their family situation and from the stresses of at home or at work, or even children are stressful. They want to get away from their child.
Oh yeah, no, that's totally me. Like, I mean, yes, I mean, there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, I think I'm a really good parent.
That's good.
But ironically, I never really wanted kids.
Oh,
So yeah, he was a surprise, and no regrets. He's awesome. love him to death, but he is exhausting. And there are many days where I'm just like, I wish I could just go play, or I wish I could go write or whatever. So yes, it is nice to have those little escapes, but I look at them as not just a night out, but also like, I'm also moving forward in some ways by,
Gotcha.
it's
progression.
practice, it's connections. It's, you bounce around to different places and check them out, talk to the people who work there. Hopefully, maybe you can set up something paid in the future.
Hopefully they like you.
Yeah. So what I want to do is like put less time into my day job and put more time into music and get more gigs on the weekends. Yeah, and just balance it out a little bit.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing with Cody Kilburn, is trying to balance out different gigs. And you're right, music doesn't make a lot of money. And if your parents ever tell you not to go into music because it doesn't make money, yes, they're right, but also don't listen to that.
Yeah, do whatever you want to do. But I can confirm it really is tough.
It is tough. Unless you're like doing like Sight and Sound or like some of the bigger theaters.
Sure.
If you're a gig musician, it's going to be a little rough unless you make it big.
Yeah, and we don't live in the most like cultured area either.
No.
You have to be in a classic rock cover band or whatever if you want to get
strangely prog rock is big around here.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed that, but prog rock is giant around here.
Yeah.
But yeah, folky music,
Mm-hmm.
country rock, or prog rock, and you're good. If you're there's a pop circle. There's a little bit of a hip hop circle around Harrisburg for sure. I know that for a fact. But otherwise, good luck.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough out there.
It is tough out there.
And I know in a post-COVID world, well, I guess we're kind of entering that now. Some acts that had gigs every Friday and Saturday night are even struggling to find stuff now. I had a spreadsheet going before COVID of venues in the area.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. And I had a bunch of shows that I had to cancel because of COVID.
Oh, okay,
and
gotcha.
So I let it sit, and I kind of took a little hiatus before I came back as Ruddy Turnstone. And I brought the spreadsheet back up recently, and I went through the list of venues. I had like 100 on there, and so many of them aren't there anymore, or just aren't doing music anymore. So, and that's because of COVID. So it's really changed things. Yeah. Wow. So it's been a slow return. Dang,
I mean that's so like hard to like imagine like they were Thanos snapped away.
Yeah, exactly. Or like even if the venues are still standing and still doing music, they don't have the same point of contact as before. So it's like you're starting over again, trying to find the right person to get in touch with.
And then there's comes so many politics and drama that can come with that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to politics and that of like navigating people correctly to get, because networking is all about politics. If not like the Republican Democrat kind of politics, but more of just like people pleasing to a certain extent, and
which is why I hate doing it.
It's sometimes it's so degrading.
It is. I don't like it, and that's part of the reason why I have not gotten more shows in the past, because I have resisted, and that's my own shortcoming. I'm not good at that. Trying to be better about it.
Sometimes it's a plus. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Maybe so, but
because at some point you have to have boundaries.
Yeah,
and hard lines.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But it does come at a cost.
Yeah. And
sometimes the costs outweigh the benefits sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But so going back to the venue stuff, if anyone's ever curious about checking out different venues and knowing what's going on within Lancaster City, if there's a guy called Liam Galliano, I had him on, I think it was Monday. I realized that once you start doing things, everything is a blur.
Mm-hmm.
But he has a list of like active open mics and like venues that will do trivia, karaoke, open mics. So if you and he's like an open page, I think. So if you follow him, you can definitely find out. You know Liam,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's definitely got a great resource there for any and all musicians, and he's an awesome bass player. So you should check him out.
Yeah, great guy, great bass player. And yes, that list has been very helpful because when I first started getting out again, that's what I would go to. I just visit that his page and look at that list, and that's kind of how I like started hopping around to open mics again.
Yeah, it's super useful. So moving on from dealing with the family life, because I feel like we've exhausted that a little bit. Let's move on to the aliases.
Sure.
And like, what was your purpose for creating them? Why did you think you needed to have them? What's the point of having Jasper the Tourist? Is it
Jasper the Tourist?
Jasper
yeah.
the Tourist, and then turning over to Ruddy Turnstone?
Mm-hmm.
And what are the inspirations from those monikers and aliases?
Sure. So yeah, we were talking about this a little bit pre-show, but my first solo project started after the Crossline, which was the band that I play bass in that we talked about earlier. And then I also was a lead singer in a band in Virginia called No Fault of Their Own. So I just think aliases are cool for one thing. Like and if you can come up with an interesting one, then it kind of makes you stand out a little bit. I think it's easier for people to remember you than just referring to your real name. And in my case, my last name can be difficult for some people to try and get right or pronounce.
Spell it.
It's Kulkusky, Kulkusky.
Kulkusky.
It looks more difficult than it actually is. But I knew that people would struggle with that and they might not stick in their brains. So I thought maybe it would be wise to take up an alias. I just thought it would be more interesting too. So, and I thought if I ever wanted to expand the project into a full band, then I would already have a name. It wouldn't have to be
we'll have to change
Chris and the whatevers,
Chris and
yeah. So that was part of it. So Jasper the Tourist, I actually started back in 2008. So like 15 years ago. And it started under another name, which was Willow Station. And then I dropped that.
Willow Station?
Yeah, and I kept playing the same songs, but I changed the name to Jasper the Tourist.
So what was the point of, what was the inspiration behind that?
The name comes from, I used to have a dog named Jasper.
Okay.
And it was just an inside joke that my wife and I had. This was 11 years ago, or 12 or so. I don't even know. I'm just getting old. We've only been married for 7 years, but we've been together for a long time.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, we were living in North Carolina when I came up with this. And yes, Jasper, was a cool dog. He loved to travel. And got real hyped up when we would go on road trips and stuff. So he was like our little tourist. So we had this joke about how we were and we had another dog, his sister Zoe, and she was kind of like a maniac. So we just had this joke about we were going to dress them up for Halloween. Zoe was going to be in a straitjacket, and Jasper would be in like a tourist outfit, like a Hawaiian shirt and a camera and the hat. It was just a stupid. It was just a stupid joke. It was a dumb joke, and I was like, "Hey, Jasper the Tourist." I was like, I kind of like that, so I adopted it as the name of the project, and I played under that name for a long time, up until 2020.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then I basically went on hiatus when COVID hit, and I just wasn't sure if I was going to come back and do anything again because I was feeling pretty down, because I was finally starting to, progress a little bit, and then everything got derailed. So I got frustrated, and in true emotional me fashion, just was like, I hate this, I'm not doing it anymore. And then a few months later I'm like, I gotta get back out there again. But there was a shift somewhere over those couple years, and I started writing songs again, and I noticed that they were kind of different from what I was doing before, and I liked them better. There was just a different my lyrics were coming from another place, and I felt like there was just a big shift. And I didn't really identify the music that I was playing with the Jasper the Tourist image and brand and songwriting style that I had been doing for all those years. There were a few songs that I wrote in the past that I still play today, but it's 4 or 5 of them that I kept around.
Which ones?
You may not have even heard them.
Oh.
So, well, three of them are on Spotify. Out of Sorts, The Suicide Watch, and Fight the Flight. They're older songs that I still like. And some of them you may have heard me play them live. Gray and Seven Gates.
Gray, yeah, I have
Yeah.
learned Gray.
Gray was actually a song that I wrote for the Crossline.
Oh.
So that wasn't even
So
a
it's
Jasper song.
old
That was the
song.
first song I ever wrote on guitar.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And it was full band on our on the Crossline EP, but I still think it's a decent song, so I still play it. So I have some that kind of represent each of my projects that I still play, but it's only five or six of them, I think. But everything else I do is new to Ruddy Turnstone. So I had a lot of baggage attached to the Jasper project too. There was like a lot of personal drama that went down. I had it like the project had turned into a trio at some point, and it was just like I had moved from state to state, and there was just like a lot of not great memories that I had attached to the project and whatnot too. So I just decided to start fresh and rebrand and everything. And I think all my newer songs are stronger than anything I had with that project, at least most of it. And I just felt like it was time for a change. So it kind of I felt reinvigorated, and I needed a new name to go along with that.
And so why'd you pick Ruddy Turnstone?
A lot of this comes down to the fact that like every idea that I had is already taken.
Okay.
So whenever I think of something, I do a Google search, and like then I'm like, dang, there's already a band in like, Washington State that has this name or something, or I'd find somebody's Instagram account and be like, well, can't use that one.
What's the example of that?
I can't think of any now, but I had all these ideas over the past few years, and a few of them I thought were pretty good and pretty original, but obviously I didn't think of them first. So
right.
I didn't want to use anything that anybody else had thought of. So Ruddy Turnstone, that one I thought of because it sounds like a name.
It does. It really does. I thought your name. Well, I thought your name was Rudy. It turns out.
Yeah. But I'm like kind of like low key into like birding, like on the
birding,
well, at least coastal birds. So yeah, we used to live in the Outer Banks briefly, and we've visited quite a bit. Have a lot of connection to the place. So Ruddy Turnstone is a shorebird. It's a type of plover, and rarely spotted down there. And I never actually spotted one. So it's been like trying to catch Mew from Pokemon or whatever. You know what
like
I mean?
Snipe hunting?
Yeah. So I don't know. It was just an idea I had. I thought, well, I always liked Ruddy Turnstones. I think they're cool. It sounds like a person's name, but also it could be a band. It could be a band.
It's a solid name.
Yeah, and I think it just kind of fits the vibe of the music that I have, so it just worked. And then I did my research, and at first I was kind of disappointed because I found that years ago, out in California, there was a band that used the name for like 5 months. And then they just didn't exist anymore. And I was like, well, they haven't been around for a long time, so I'm just doing this.
So I can't be bothered to find another one.
No,
they haven't been around.
I kind of had my heart set on this one, and I was like, okay, well, it's mine now.
That's too bad. Yeah, you had your chance. You died. I'm taking
right. I've already been around longer than they lasted, so.
That's awesome. I've never really thought of doing like an alias, only because I feel like Corey Rosen is such a good, like, it's a powerhouse name almost.
It's a good name. Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like, because I had this conversation with one of my good friends, Cassidy Ray Martin, and she didn't want to sound so Lancastrian as like Cassidy Martin, like because that's like such a normal name per se, but it's also a really strong name too. Like my name is Cassidy Martin. She wanted to go with Cassidy Ray, but I feel like I had told her that I felt like Cassidy Ray feels almost incomplete in some aspect.
Yeah, I get that. It's
Yeah.
funny how like just certain sounds like mean certain things to our brain. Like
Right.
Cassidy Martin feels like it has some oomph to it.
It
Yeah.
has some finality to it.
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
my name is Cassie Ray, and
Yeah.
it
Right.
feels like it's not as like settled down. Versus my name is Cassidy Martin, or I guess the the sound of your voice,
Mm-hmm.
the pitch would go down since it's Cassidy Martin.
Right.
So Cassidy Martin. It's not a question. It's an answer.
Right.
But yeah, so it's always interesting to talk to people to find out what's the reasoning behind their different aliases. A future guest that I'm having on, Duke So Crazy, I won't say his name because I don't know if he's okay with that, but I thought his name was Duke.
Mm-hmm.
Because that makes sense, but it's I think it's one of his names, but it's not it's not his main name, and I'm
Right.
like, huh. But I'm just always curious to like submit. I'm gonna have Sam on eventually, and she's I'm not sure where she's at with this, but she performs under the name Amelia,
Right.
But I want to know from her what's the reasoning behind it, because Samantha, like, that's a good name. Sam Machen, I think it is. But
I
it's
don't know her last name.
it's I think it's a strong name. I like the name. But to each their own. If they want to go on, and some of these people do it strictly because I like my anonymity.
Yeah, and I understand that. I had a thought and I lost it. The 7 seconds. See?
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think part of it might be with some acts like it's a marketing thing as
for
well.
sure.
Because sometimes I think like regular names can kind of get lost in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have like that one, like especially in her case, it's like one word. That's like a very like pop star thing to do. You know what I mean?
Yes, it is. Yeah, and it's such a out there name.
Mm-hmm.
Not in the sense that it's ridiculous, but it sticks.
Yeah.
Oh, it's Amelia, and it's granted the spelling is a bit weird. I'll say that, but it sounds cool,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, oh, it's Amelia. It's a good show name. It's a good show name. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But I've never really needed to feel. I've never felt the need to change my own name, at least, because you want to know the story behind my actual name, my legit name.
Sure.
So Corey Rosen. I wasn't supposed to be a Corey, according to my dad. My dad wanted me named Freddie Rosen the Third. Which to be quite fair, he was the junior, so fair enough. But and it didn't matter what my name was going to be anyway, because I grew up being called Little Freddie anyway, because he was such a well known man around, and his dad were so well known musicians that everyone just called me Little Freddie anyway. So but my mother was like, no, we're not doing it. I don't know what her reasoning for. I would love to know why she wanted to call me Corey. That's not something I never got from her.
It's just like the name.
Maybe she just liked the name. But my dad, I truly believe my dad got his revenge when he named my sister Kara. So every time they got mad at me, Corey, whoever you are.
Yeah, I can see where that would get confusing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's both C names too. So
Right. And
right.
2 syllables. Yeah.
Yeah, and something that always made me mad was that my school, out of all institutions, my school, who has my name written down in all sorts of places,
Mm-hmm.
whenever I get like honor roll or something, it would always include the E in my name, and I'm like, this is not me. This is not me. Granted, nowadays I could not care less if you misspelled my name.
Yeah.
However, back then it was like, you're my school, guys.
Right.
My parents' tax dollars are going to you please get my name right on my awards members.
Yeah, I know. Well, it was from a lifetime of hearing Kolkuski.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you would have the same. There is so many friends of mine that had really strange, not well, I guess not strange, just unique names. There was a girl. Her name was Aisha, but if you looked at it, Aizha,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people said Asia.
Right. I would. That's what I would think too.
Exactly.
Probably.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because that's it almost feels like just a different way of spelling Asia, like
Mhm.
the country. But for so every time I had class with her, I would wait for the teacher to be like Asia, and everybody would be like, no, it's Asia. You silly goose.
Yeah.
But how would they know? They're
Right.
30-year-old adults plus who've never seen such names before.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always been fun. Kukulski, is that what they would say?
Yeah, I've heard it all. I've heard people put Z's in my name. It's
Really?
yeah, that's strange. Kolkuski is a popular one though, or Kolkowski.
Okay, I could see it because I was thinking of the Home Alone actor, Kevin McCalkley.
Are you the kid?
Yeah, the
What's
kid.
his
Yeah.
name? Oh, yeah. I'm having a brain
Oh,
fart.
what was his name? Like, the
Oh,
Home Alone. Here, I'm gonna look it up.
it's on the
Real
tip of my tongue.
quick.
Macaulay Culkin.
Macaulay
Yeah,
Culkin.
yeah,
Yeah. Macaulay. Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. What? He has four names. Is his name? Well, his name is Macaulay Culkin. According to Wikipedia, at least.
Okay.
That's
That's
wild.
news to me.
Right, but it almost reminds me that's what your name reminded me of when I saw it. I was like, oh, it's like Macaulay Culkin, almost, but it's Kukulski.
Yeah.
And that's why I thought I feel like people would get Kukowski because of
Yeah.
or like Mike Wazowski.
A lot of well, a lot of like Polish-y names like mine are Alskis, but we're
Mhm.
Huskies.
You're Huskies.
Like rhymes with husky.
Yeah, that's one way to explain it, at least. Names are fun. Names are what make us.
Yeah.
Is that
I
what?
don't know. It's just really it doesn't mean anything.
Well,
it's just a sound
just
that
a
somebody
sound.
decided means something that
Well,
gets slapped onto us for our lives.
Well, but it is true because, like, you feel completely different when you have a different name. Like, there's different feelings to names for sure, in my opinion. Like, and it's the reputation you can make with a name, like Prince.
Yeah, sure.
That's a reputation.
Oh yeah, I was
Like,
just
you know what I
joking
mean? Yeah, right.
about like the evolution of language and how
Oh,
it's
right,
funny
yeah,
how really
it's a
it
sounds.
really it just comes from something random a long time ago that has evolved over
Right.
time.
It truly all languages just sounds. Stupid sounds we make, and have codified. But I find it to be interesting. The amount of weight a name can have is immense.
Mhm.
Because there are some people who would cry at names. You know what I mean?
Go on.
well, like for example, like if I had named, for example, if a couple had a kid and it had died, but if someone had just had that different name, or for example, for even better personal example, I had a girlfriend with a specific name, and I can't look at anybody else with the same name the same.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Like it has a weight to
Right.
it,
Yeah.
and so I can't.
Then you have a personality or a memory to go along
A
with
memory
it,
to
yeah.
go along with it. So that name is just ruined for me now, especially if it was a bad experience. Like, not my last girlfriend, but like my first girlfriend was a horrible experience. So any person with that name is just automatic red flag or automatic. I just don't want to be involved.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, that makes sense.
And but if you had met a person with the same name as your son, I'm sure you might automatically be like kind of endeared almost.
Yeah, apparently it's a popular name now, which we didn't realize because he doesn't have any others in his preschool class. But I felt like when I was home with him and I was taking him out into the world and to playgrounds and stuff, like there are always other. His name's Owen.
Oh,
Always
Owens,
other
yeah.
Owens around.
I know
yeah.
a few Owens.
Yeah.
Owens is more of the last name I've known at least.
Well, it's not. It's just Owen.
Owen.
Yeah.
Fair enough. There's only one of them.
Because Owens with an S is that's the last name. But no, he's named after one of my favorite musical projects, which is called Owen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What are they about?
Have you ever heard of American Football? Legendary emo band American
Football. Is that a sarcastic question?
No, not the sport.
I was like, yeah, I've heard of the NFL, or.
Okay, well, Cue Up Never Meant Later. They're probably their most popular song. Anyway, this guy is probably more well known for being in American Football, which is like a mathy, clean guitar, late '90s originated emo band. But his side project is called Owen. And it's more of an acoustic-based thing. He plays in a lot of weird time signatures. You probably like it for that reason, because the music is very interesting, very good finger picking, and very like tongue-in-cheek, kind of sarcastic and witty lyrics. So it's right up my alley.
Yeah, right. That sounds like a gigantic inspiration.
Yeah. So anyway, and my wife likes his music as well. And
that's good.
We had trouble landing on a boy's name. We saw lots of girls' names we liked, but like we were going through a list one day, and it was just like no, and eventually we were just like, how about Owen? We both like Owen.
What? So did you guys know it was gonna be a boy, or did you guys?
Yeah, we found out when we were able to. Yeah.
Okay, so I know some people just wanted to be a surprise, and I don't understand those people.
No, I mean it's like if we can, why not? Because then at least you can prepare a little bit, whatever that even means.
Well, yeah, whatever.
When you've never had a baby before, there is no preparing. You just
it's like
you
there's
just
only words
learn
you
as
can
you
read
go.
about.
Yeah,
yeah. And every child, I've heard it this way: children are monsters you have to civilize, and I feel like that's the most accurate, at least in my.
Yeah, well, I mean, they come in, and I mean, one thing I have learned is like, yes, they have very distinct personalities.
Oh, for sure.
My son isn't just like a copy of me or my wife by any means. He's a very unique individual, but still, you gotta mold them to be a good person, and
because they will steal the cookie.
Oh yeah,
they will steal the cookie and then some. There's I was talking to a guy called Chad Hogg. He is a part of a dad punk band.
Nice.
Which I'm so excited to talk about, called Ford the River. And one of his songs that he wrote was called, I think it's something along the lines of mine, I need, now, me. Something like that. But it's all according to, he wrote it based off of his own children and how much that they demand, and that they're like sometimes manipulative, but they just want love.
Yeah.
But that's at the core of it. They just want your love.
Yeah.
And I found that to be so. It's an interesting perspective, because that's all a kid really needs, or really just wants. It wants to be loved.
Yeah.
And the way you do that, I guess, is subject to whoever's raising the kid. But when it comes down to it, if you have a child, you have to love them.
Sure.
Or else it's gonna damage them for a long, long time.
Yeah, and I have, even though it has been a challenge, I think for both me and my wife, we really are two people who would rather be out being busybodies doing what we do best, rather than like staying at home. Like I stayed home as a stay-at-home parent with my son for 2 years during COVID, and didn't enjoy it. I like being active, and that again is not a knock against my kid. It's just
it's just different personalities.
Yeah, but
you can't, to some extent, you can't let that show to your kid.
Right, you can't. But it's challenging, and you can't be perfect around them either. They need to know you're a human being as well, with feelings too.
The moment when I found out my parents were actual humans, I was like, how dare they?
But what I'm getting at is like, yeah, I mean, it's been, I don't want to make some of the same mistakes my parents made. I'm very conscientious of that, especially my dad. And
did your dad ever do music?
No.
Okay.
No. My mom's side has some of that, but not my dad. But I just, I want to be, I mean, I am like, we have a special bond, and I've put a lot into making sure that he has everything he needs, and my wife as well. I say me, but this is a dual effort. But
Right.
you know, I was the one home with him for so long, and it was a struggle. But you know, like I always had in the back of my mind, like this is what needs to be done. You know, this is what he needs, and I
You
gotta
gotta make
focus on that.
sacrifices.
Yeah.
A kid being I've learned this from having my job with kids, but you just have to make sacrifices. No, and you got to realize that some of these, like if you didn't make some of these sacrifices, these are their formative years. A sacrifice you don't make is like one of their personality traits for the rest of their life.
Yeah, I know. And I think, yeah, a lot of people like scoff at this stuff, but I mean, it's really, it all comes down to like, especially having my own mental health crises and whatnot as I've gotten older, you realize how much what happened in your very early childhood just affects you for the rest of your life. And I don't want my son to carry my burdens. No parent is perfect. Every kid is going to take away something crappy from their parents. It's just
how
the way
it
it is. But, you know, to be conscientious of that, I think is very important. And, like my dad is the kind of guy who doesn't believe that mental illness is even really a thing. So yeah, like, which is absurd, right? But unfortunately, I think especially among a lot of men, especially of his generation, that's a pretty common.
Well, because they weren't allowed to have mental illness,
right?
They were like, bullied out. It was bullied out of them, effectively.
Yeah, but you know, but then they become screwed up people who screw up their kids.
Yep.
And I decided that when we were going to have our son, that this is where it stops. This is where
the generational trauma stops. Yep.
This is on us to stop these generations, and it goes back. We could talk all day on another podcast about this, but it goes way back. In both my family and my wife's family, and it's just like I feel like some days we're shouldering that. We are the ones with all the responsibility to just put all that garbage in the past and move forward without it, and it's hard.
No, absolutely. I feel like there's so much I could go into about my own family that wasn't the best. I've talked a little bit about my dad and how he was not the best father, being drunk, being an angry drunk, and sometimes abusive drunk. Not to me, but it and the one the. But also, I one thing that was shocking to me was so I was a mother's boy through and through. Because my mother was always there, one off, and second off, she said that I was her soulmate over my dad. So she poured her whole entire life and soul into me, and so much so that I still have great respect. I had great respect for her even until after her death. So much so that I created a whole OCD around her death. But that's where I get my germaphobe from, is her death. But
I get that.
Yeah. She taught science, so my thought was, science killed her. So then I had to separate everything from science, and then COVID just just kind of gave it all a whole new measure. But
it makes sense though.
When I realized that I knew she smoked and I knew she drank. But I didn't know that she had lost her job because she was keeping wine in the school's fridge. And she was a science teacher, so she had a fridge. Right. So that's where she kept her wine. I didn't know that. And I didn't know that she was sneakily making financial decisions without my father's input. Like, she bought a whole new car like every year. I didn't know that. Mostly because I only remember her blue 2008 Honda Accord because I like the color blue.
Yeah.
He had explained to me that, well, yeah, she had like a red one for like ages and then a black one. I was like, what? No, that's not right. It was always blue. But apparently that's and he has pictures, so it must have happened.
Right.
So I just realizing the amount of human that my mother was, it was shocking to me that she had gotten into an affair.
Yeah.
and that's why my dad had been angry with her
Uh-huh.
when drunk.
Yeah.
And so, but when he had done that, I did not believe him whatsoever. I was like, no, you're just a butthole who hates my mother, or just like imagine this whole thing because you were drunk,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But no, that's what she did. She had an affair, and when I heard that, or when I finally like learned that and accepted that, I was like, man, we make idols out of the worst people sometimes.
Well, that doesn't mean she's was a bad
Oh no,
person,
no,
though.
she's
She's just like you
a
said,
human.
she's just
Yeah,
a
right.
human. I mean, really, you can point your finger at any random person you see walking by, and everybody has their skeletons in the closet and their story, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that it's I try I think I'm a fairly forgiving person because I realize as someone who's made a lot of mistakes that people just mess up. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
it's
no.
just
I,
part
I
of being a person.
I'm not saying I don't forgive my mother, or I'm like lambasting her, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm like lambasting my dad, because I love my dad. My dad is awesome now. And my mother, I still love her deeply.
Mm-hmm.
I still care like about her legacy and everything. But I have to realize that I like almost worshipped this false god
Mm-hmm.
for a while, and just coming to terms with that was almost like breaking out of a cult almost.
Yeah, and some of that is like just part of growing up too, because as children, especially when we have parents that kind of like sugarcoat things for us because they don't really want us to see the
Right,
ugliness
yes.
of the world, it's very jarring when you finally do see the reality. And I get that too, totally. So I know what you mean.
So we're kind of wrapping up our time on the radio. Up next is a conversation about religion. Uh, Granted, one of your songs that we're going to be playing. So if you want to check out that topic, you can follow us at facebook.com/, the story Corey Rosen. That is where we will be continuing this conversation live. Right now, we're gonna well, where can they find you? Where can people find you?
I'm on the internet. If you search Ruddy Turnstone, you'll see pictures of birds, but you'll probably also find me. I am on Facebook, but my music is on all streaming platforms. So if you go on Spotify and search Ruddy Turnstone, all my releases are on there.
That is RUDDY.
Yep.
Then turn TURN Stone STONE. And can they find your previous projects on there too, like Jasper the Tourist and Crossfire?
The Crossline. Well, no, because that was all the way back in 2007 before streaming, and I
That's
haven't
fair.
talked to any of them since. So,
Fair
not
enough.
that stuff. Now, I have a single that I did with No Fault of Their Own that didn't see a big release back in the day that I put out there as Ruddy Turnstone and No Fault of Their Own. We'll play that song later. Jasper the Tourist does not exist on the internet anymore because I just felt like I had to bury
Bury
it.
it. Yeah.
But that's okay. There's a full album called Full Moon Carnival, handful of singles, collaborative EP I did with my rapper friends. So there's lots of stuff to check out.
Cool. Well, with that, we're going to introduce the first song called Spiral.
Yep. All
And
right.
do you want to introduce this?
Yeah. So this is from my album that I put out in November called Full Moon Carnival. Corey and I were kind of talking about concept albums earlier. I don't know if you want me to get too far into that now, but
Yeah, we'll also get into that later on as
okay,
well.
sure. So we'll return to that, but this song is one of my favorites on the record. It's a little bit more slower paced and droney. Um, and I'm kind of a vibes guy, so when I wrote this one, it just kind of evoked some like strange imagery, and I came up with some like interesting verse wordplay for it. So at this point in the album, the main character is basically accepting that the descent into madness is beginning, um, and kind of reflecting on uh, obviously like in a state of depression and kind of just reflecting on the world around him and feeling a lack of control and comparing comparing himself to other people and
Almost.
just letting it go and just saying, "All right, this is it. I'm going down. Let's see what happens."
Oh, with that said, this is Spiral by Mr. Ready Turnstone. And that was Spiral by Mr. Ready Turnstone. And who was with you on that one?
Okay, so the female vocals that you hear there, that's my friend Brahmi. Um, I know Brahmi from like the I used to live in York, so she played with this guy named Wick, and I'd see them at open mics and stuff. I never knew her that well, but I always thought she was a good singer. And it just so happened that when I was recording my album, I had told the producers that would like some female backup vocals on a few tracks, and they were friends with her, so we was easy to get her in there, and she just came in and knocked it out like right away. So that's pretty cool.
It's
Yeah.
funny how we were kind of talking about it while the song was playing, that a lot of things come down to networking.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But we've talked a lot about it on that show, so we're not going to talk much more about it. However, this I'm sure this next song with you and FaZe comes down to a lot of networking as well.
Yeah. So, yeah, the next song is called Views from My Community, and you can find it on an EP that FaZe and I put out a few months ago called the Final Key EP. FaZe and I have been friends for, gosh, quite a while now. I'm trying to think. We probably met in like 2015, and it was at an open mic that was actually at an art space, and it was more of a poetry open mic, but so there was no PA system or anything. I mean, it was just like you go in and
Go in there and talk.
yeah. But I used to go and take my guitar, and they still let me do my thing.
That's good.
But FaZe would freestyle, and I was really impressed with what he did the first time I saw him. So we swapped contacts, and then whenever we were in the same space, we would just like we would perform together, and he would just like freestyle over whatever I was doing on guitar, and we just had good chemistry, and it worked. So we collaborated a lot over the years. We played some of the same shows together, um, and we wrote that song with our friend from Philadelphia, who also used to live in New York, Swan Daly. He does his own music as well. He does kind of like neo soul stuff.
Ooh.
And he actually composed the beat for that song, and I came up with the chorus, and based on the chorus that I had written, FaZe came up with his verses. So it was very much
That's
a
cool.
collaborative effort. And it's kind of a cool song because, like, I think it's a great beat. First of all, it's kind of got that like old school hip hop vibe, and FaZe's lyrics on it are very clever. And I think my vocals on the track are kind of like non-traditional for a hip hop song, which makes it interesting.
For sure.
Yeah, and that goes for the so that one kind of stands out as like a more like jazzy, soulful kind of number on the EP. And there are two other songs, and they both sample video games.
That's fun.
Because that's one thing FaZe and I have in common is we're both like
Gamers.
fans of games, and especially game compositions. Like we both really
yeah, they're-
appreciate music from RPGs and stuff.
So good.
So, yeah, we sample aquatic ambiance from Donkey Kong Country and the Kingdom Hearts theme, the one, ding, da-dun, 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 that one. Yeah,
That's so. It's really interesting that you mentioned that he was just a freestyle because we have we at the open mics there are people who would come up and like rap over some of the stuff we do. Most recently at the Shamrock Cafe that happened.
yes, that was entertaining.
Sometimes it's good and sometimes it's a little wacky.
I put that one on the wacky end of
Yeah,
the
that was
spectrum.
that was a bit more wacky for sure. But there's a lot of cool spoken word people out here. Freddie Rivera comes to mind.
Yeah,
Have you ever met him?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a really cool cat. There's a Native American dude, like a legit Native American dude. His name is escaping me. But he does spoken word, and we have performed on. I have performed under that. Which is, it's a lot of fun performing with poetry because you really get to make it up, and it's so authentic.
Yeah, and if it's someone who is a good writer and also someone who is good at the performance aspect of it, and they're just vibing off the music you're making, it can create something really cool. And that was kind of the case with FaZe. Like he has albums up on Spotify as well, so check his stuff out too because he's very good. You can find that EP on my page or his page.
So FaZe is Phaze.
Yes. And anyway, yes, but like unfortunately, I feel like with the open mic scene, there is some kind of like racial divide there, I think. At least in York there was, because York's primarily a city of minorities, and you go to any open mic in the city and it's just white people for the most part. Even though there's a hip hop scene, he was one of the only ones to ever really like cross over.
Divide.
Yeah, so that's part of the reason why we had the idea to do that. It was kind of like we want to bring these worlds together a little bit, because you don't see a lot of that. And he would just rap over whatever band was there. He could do anything.
That's That's sick.
It's very cool. Yeah. So like some guys that I've seen it go to open mics and do hip hop will like play something off their phone. They'll like hook it up to the PA system.
Yeah.
But he always preferred to do it over live music, and it was always a lot of fun.
Yeah, there have been some people that do that kind of thing at Telus for
Mhm.
sure. Um, a good one that comes to mind is underrated visuals. That's how I know his handle.
Mm.
I think he's mostly a photographer, but he does some really cool rap stuff. But I think it's not to knock a backing track at all,
Mhm.
but I've noticed a lot of the people who do that just don't take out the vocals. I wish they would just take out their
Yeah, it
vocals so
doesn't
that
sound good. Yeah.
yeah, because you know your timbre of your voice is always different than when you're recording something. You know, microphones change that. This is not how my voice sounds in real life. I really wish it was because that'd be really cool. But so it's always a little bit distracting, and sometimes the words get muddled.
Yeah.
And I feel like it'd be so much more fun. A backing track is cool, but like it should be a karaoke track at that point.
Right. Just
Um,
remove the vocals.
just remove
Yeah.
just remove the vocals and you're gonna mess up, yeah, sure, but that's literally every other musician in the entire world. So you know, make your performance your own, and that's not to say that it's a bad idea. I think it would just add more to your performance if you had just the backing track and without your vocals.
Mhm.
And I feel like it's much more authentic and much more personable that way as well.
Yeah, I agree. Mhm.
But if anybody disagrees with that, they can come on and talk about it for sure. Because there are some people in the future that I'm going to have on that definitely do that. So that's the topic I'm going to bring up for sure
Mhm.
because I want to know why they do it.
Yeah.
That's my main curiosity
Mhm.
is because I can't sing very well. And I'm sure that might be one of their reasons is that maybe they don't sing as well, so they just want to have the backing track just to rely on.
Mhm.
But even then, it's like I would rather hear either or, not both at the same time.
Right. Yeah, I feel you.
But with all that said, this is I'm sorry, the name isn't on here.
It's views from my community. So I'll tell you a little bit about the
Yeah.
content of the song
Right.
before you play it. So the title was actually something that Swan came up with, the producer. I don't know where he got the inspiration for it, but I was just like, can I just write something to that? Because I just like the ring of it. I don't know if the direction I took it was really what he had in mind. Probably not, because I always take things to the dark side. I think he probably the beat that he had written kind of invoked some other kind of like perspective about the community. But I had kind of related it to a more personal experience where I had one of a few, we can talk about this later too if you want, few like mental breakdowns, and it was kind of public, and it was attached to my Jasper the Tourist thing, and I felt like I had kind of bounced back, and I was really trying to like be open about my mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like the whole music scene was like very gossipy.
Oh, it
And
still is. There's a
Yeah.
lot of drama currently happening. In the
Yeah,
music
and I
scene.
felt like all my dirty laundry was being talked about all the time. Now, I always write stuff with like a little bit of my personal experience, but then I really like lay it on thick sometimes to make a story. And I just kind of like based on the views from my community, I was like, well, right now the views I'm getting from my community aren't
Right,
aren't
good,
great.
yeah.
So then I just kind of got the rhyme scheme going from there with the immunity thing, and it was like one line led into another, and hence the references to the internet and stuff. And then FaZe just kind of took it from based his verses on what I wrote as inspiration, and it all came together very nicely
Oh, with that said, this is views.
from my community.
Okay, literally just views from my community, by Mr. Ruddy Turnstone and FaZe. That was views from the community.
Views from my community.
Views from my community. My community. It's mine. The chord progression was really interesting. It sounded just like a bunch of descending. So it was like major to minor, major to minor, which is a great pattern. What was one thing I've incorporated a few times in my own songs is because it's such a fun chord progression.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was. And you said who created that? That was your
Swan Daly.
Swan Daly.
Yeah, and like I said, he has a few singles under that name, and
is that 2 N's or 1 N?
One, like Swan, SWAN, and then Daly, DALEY. Yeah.
Okay, not daily like as in day to day, but
right.
Yeah, I got
you.
Yeah, I'm realizing it's always important to spell these things out because people are gonna search the wrong things.
Yeah. So he's in Philly now, but he's still doing his thing. Like I said, he's got a few singles up you can check out. Very good producer.
Cool. The next one we're gonna upload or bring in, shall we say, is a postcard from Gehenna, which is I like the song a lot from you.
You want to do that one before flying?
I will. Okay, let's do flying so that way we can like
get off on a tangent,
right? of religion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that cool?
Yeah, no, that's cool with me. Let's go and flying straight into the sun. I want to learn more about this.
Okay, so the deal with this is a kind of a blast from the past. So this song was recorded in 2010. The story here is that I met my wife Erin in late 2008. We got together officially in 2009. My high school friend lived in Chesapeake, Virginia, which is down near Virginia Beach. Mm-hmm. He was in the Navy, just recently purchased a house. Just kind of on a whim one day was like, if you guys ever decide to move down here, you can just move in with me and got enough space. So we kind of were like, why don't we do it?
Having a house is nice.
Yeah, we just we quit our jobs and we just left with no plan. And
flying straight into the sun, might you say?
Yes, exactly. you got it. So and not long after we moved down, I saw an ad for a band looking for a lead singer, and I tried out. The way I tried out was they actually had a demo on MySpace, if you remember MySpace.
Oh my! I never used MySpace, but I've heard rumors.
That was my jam, MySpace. Yeah. So I listened to the demo and I wrote the lyrics for the song, and then I went to a garage and met them and I sung it for them and they loved it and they hired me.
So what was that Crossline?
That was No Fault of Their Own.
No Fault of That's right.
Right.
No Fault
so this was this is in Virginia. So they had a singer before I joined the band, and I think they may have had 2 or 3 actually, and just no one was sticking around. Yeah, it was like
you didn't either.
Well, the band broke up.
Oh well, never mind.
Yeah, I was the last one. So
fair enough.
Yes, but we had a good run. We played it. We played at the Norva a few times, which is like the big venue in Norfolk. We opened up for a couple national acts.
That's dope.
Yeah. And then we cut this 3-song EP, and it saw a very limited physical release, no digital release, and the original bass player got kicked out because he was kind of a jerk, if I'm being real.
we can talk about that for sure.
And then I then moved to North Carolina because my wife, her job had taken her down there to the Outer Banks. She was a newspaper reporter at the time, working for the Virginia newspaper, but she was like the one-woman office that covered the Outer Banks area. So we had to be separated at that point because she had to live down there, and I was an hour and a half north in Hampton Roads. So there was a lot of tension between the other band members. They were all a bit older than I was at the time. They were in their 30s. I was still in my early 20s. And I kind of had felt like an outsider anyway. But between me then having to move to North Carolina, and then eventually, like, the other guitar player was getting ready to move to Tennessee, it just kind of fell apart. And also, our drummer had muscular dystrophy. The drummer did.
That would be a problem.
So I mean, his condition was starting to worsen, so it just wasn't lining up anymore. And the guy who started the band basically decided to call it quits. I had told them if they wanted to find somebody else, that's fine. I wouldn't be offended. They could even use the songs, but it ended. So I have continued to play this song over the years, even though I co-wrote it with Josh, the guitarist, and he had given me his blessing long ago. He said he'd rather see the song live on than have it just die off because it's a good song. I think it holds up. And so I played the acoustic version for years, and I did not have a copy of the EP that we cut those years ago. So recently, I tracked down most of the band members to see if they had it, and nobody has it. Nobody has a copy. And like I asked my mom, and nobody. I don't know very many people that had it, and the few people that I do know, nobody has it. We all lost it over the years because it was on CD,
Right.
And
oh my gosh.
So I then went on Reddit, and I went to
of all places. Of all places.
So well, you can sometimes
No, I know,
you
but,
can
like,
get
that's
some
so
detective work
funny.
done. So I went to Norfolk, Virginia's Reddit, and I told the story. I said I was in this band, and we had this EP. I'm looking for it. I need some help finding it. So I got some good advice as to how I might be able to track down a copy. But somebody did some digging and actually found like a defunct old page and managed to like rip files from it somehow of 2 of the songs. Only 2. One of them was missing. I don't know why. But then they sent it to me. And that was that. So I got
When was that?
Like a couple months ago.
A couple months ago.
Yeah. So that was the first time that I had heard them in years.
That's wild.
And I decided I listened to Flying Again, and I thought this song is a good song, and I think it should exist out there. And so I was like, I still play this. It's a regular part of my set. I think the song should be heard. So I'm putting this out there as Ready Turn Stone and No Fault of Their Own.
I'm pretty sure we went over this song.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
So, yeah, we did.
Yeah.
And you've heard me play it a few times, I'm sure. So, so this is that recording from 12 years ago that now has new life. So, still a staple of my sets and an important song in my history.
That was Flying Straight into the Sun by Rudy Turnstone and the
And No Fault
No
of Their
Fault of Their
Own.
Own. Yep, that's 7 seconds.
That's a long name,
It's
to be fair.
Yeah, but so the next one we're gonna talk about is Postcard from Gehenna.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to introduce that?
Yeah. So this one is from the Full Moon Carnival album, which again is a concept record about a mental health crisis. Just kind of loosely based on my personal experiences. Now this song, in the context of the record, it's kind of the point where our main character is sort of snapping out of this manic episode, right? Kind of coming back to earth.
So this is beyond the spiral.
Yes. So like the spiral occurs, the craziness happens. Driving Like Mad in the Rain, which is another song on the record, comes before this one. So in that song, this guy almost dies in a car accident.
In the rain?
Yes. And has just like it's like that's like the peak of the mania, and then he kind of has this revelation and sits on it for a while and starts thinking about life and death, and is a non-believer. Such as I am, I consider myself these days like agnostic, I guess, right? Because my thing is I just don't know. I don't think anybody really knows. That's where I'm at. I'm open-minded. I grew up in a Christian household and kind of got away from it. I was a little bit of a militant atheist for a while when I was younger because it was just like a reaction almost to the opposite of the way I grew up. But I've softened on that for sure. And I shouldn't be so arrogant. I don't think anybody should be so arrogant to say that I know that this is the truth. Because nobody really knows the truth except people who are dead. If they live on in some way, they are the ones who know. Yeah, and if they don't live on in some way, well, then nobody knows. So anyway, the character in this song, yes, a non-believer, but still, he starts the song like I was saying to Corey earlier. It kind of pokes fun at those like kind of cartoonish views of heaven, especially like with the clouds and the gates and the shining sun and the angels playing the horns.
Mm-hmm.
And
hell as well.
Hell, yeah. And the hell verse actually got that inspiration from Dante's Inferno. Don't know if you've ever read it.
Oh, well,
but that's where that visual of the three-faced demon and the sulfur pit comes from. So call back to 8th grade English class. So yeah, that's where those verses come from. So the character is thinking about this, and he's like, well, yeah, I don't believe this, but if I did, I really feel like this wouldn't be the case because that's absurd. It would be. And my personal view is if there is something, then it is more like probably like an eternal peace. It's not like a place that you can really envision like in like those old 1920s cartoons and stuff. It's something that the human mind can't comprehend, which is a line in the song. I mean, I think it's very much like a dog has a limited capacity to understand
human speech.
Anything really. Like every animal has every animal has its limits, but it's just that because we're at the top of the food chain, I think sometimes we fail to
realize that we also have our blind spots.
Exactly, and I mean, like we only understand. This is true. 1% of the universe. 99% of the universe is a mystery. Like we, the brightest minds on the planet, do not know what most of reality or whatever is beyond that actually is.
So if someone were to take the time to read everything that's ever been written, they would have been dead before they even scratched the surface of the knowledge of humanity. And that's even with the internet today, where you can read absolutely everything that's ever been written, almost everything that's been written.
Right, and like most of us, the average Joe doesn't have a good understanding of things like quantum physics and whatnot.
The average United States American doesn't know the states of America.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Much less the quantum physics.
Right. So I mean, I'm not like quantum physics and stuff. I find very interesting, but they also blow my mind because
can
I
talk
don't
about that,
really
sure.
have a math brain. But to me, that kind of all ties in with science, religion. It like all
Yeah.
comes from the same place in my viewpoint. So yeah. So I mean, that's the anyway. The narrator in the song rejects this stuff, but like thinks there really can't be a hell because like it's just like the thought of eternal torture is like
Ridiculous.
incomprehensible.
Yeah.
Which I think is true too. I think to me that just I don't understand. That's one of my hangups is like I don't see how an all loving God could have eternal torture even be a thing. But the narrator is so uncomfortable with this thought. And he's kind of got like this little like, well, what if though? There's still a chance.
Like almost Pascal's wager.
Yeah, yeah. And then there's the middle bridge section, and I just needed something to fill in the verses because it doesn't really have a chorus. And I believe in nothing but fear everything because he's kind of at this point where he's like really afraid of everything. He doesn't have a belief system, but he's still got that fear, if that makes any sense.
Well, no, because that's literally Pascal's wager. You've heard of Pascal's wagers?
Yes, but I'm not very familiar with it.
So it's I would rather have lived like a Christian and found out there was a God than lived as an atheist and found out there was a God. So I'd rather have lived a righteous life, and because if that's the case, then I've lived a righteous life.
Yeah.
I don't lose anything if there is no God. But if there is a God, I've lost everything if I haven't lived a righteous life.
Well, if there is a God and it that God is like the the biblical God, right? So yeah, I mean like God could be anything, really. We don't know. That's what I'm saying. We just really don't know. But if it's the by the book God, then yeah, then I guess you would be in trouble,
off, yeah.
right? Okay, I gotcha. Okay,
So that's the whole idea of Pascal's wager, that he would rather have lived as a Christian and found out there was no God than rather lived as a heathen essentially and found out there was a God.
Right.
That's the wager he takes.
Yeah. Okay, I got you.
So is that kind of the idea of this guy? He's like, well, but what if?
Yeah, there's just he's kind of like a little bit of paranoia going on in general too that you can kind of hear throughout the rest of the record. At least that was my intention when I wrote the album. So yes, it's this song is a bit of a culmination of a few. It's a very short song. It's under 2 minutes, but I felt like I packed a lot in there to think about.
There's a lot.
So it is one that I'm proud of. And weirdly enough, I never expected this. It's got my most plays on Spotify.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that as well. I was like, this song really? That's interesting. That's
and
so cool.
I think it's because like there are a lot of people in like the folk punk community liked this song for whatever reason. I think musically it kind of fit the bill, and they like kind of just appreciated the
rawness. Almost.
Yeah.
It's definitely relatable for sure. When I listened to it, I was like, I feel even as like I consider myself like a Christian, like a hard stop Christian. But even I was like, yeah, I've definitely felt these things before.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm good. People can relate to it. That's cool.
Well, yeah, anybody can really relate to anything. That's where I kind of stand on some things. But anyway, this is Postcard from Gehenna.
Yep.
And that was Postcard from Gehenna. That was a really short one.
Yeah, I told you it's under 2 minutes. So
It started to go over like, oh shoot, it's
yeah.
over.
Well, when you're just one guy with a guitar, your songs tend to be short.
Oh, for sure.
I like short songs anyway.
So we wanted to talk about a little bit about the Gehenna part, but we're gonna leave that to our Facebook conversation because we're gonna let the radio get back to their music because we've been 30 minutes over time on.
Oh wow,
we're supposed to
okay.
end our radio time.
My bad. I didn't realize that.
No, that's okay. I mean,
I can be a little long-winded. Short songs, long
source on
bouts
long
of talking.
Yeah. But if you want to hear more about this conversation and talk about what we believe on religion, me being a Christian and Mr. Rudy Turnstone being an agnostic.
Sure,
Yeah,
that
we'll
works.
call it that. You can head over to facebook.com/the story Corey Rosen if you'd like to hear more about that. Otherwise, we're gonna let you guys go back to the radio. Cool. And with that done,
Sorry about that. Didn't mean to take it over
I
that
totally
much.
forgot that we were on the radio for a second. I had to take ourselves on the radio. That's funny. But no, it's totally fine. Yeah, it's been my experience that people don't really care all that much. So it's not. And being a Christian church, they're very
Forgiving?
They're very forgiving. Yeah,
I would hope so.
Yeah, no, dude. Some of the professors here are mad forgiving. Like even on like tests and everything, they'll let you, like redo tests. So the standard of education here is high, and like they actually teach you. They don't expect you. It's not an indoctrination factory at all, where you have to. And we can short rant, but like most educations, like you have to take a test and you have to get every single thing right, or else it's bad. No, I believe true learning comes from taking tests over and over again, and like working because you don't retain information by just getting it wrong or right, and that's it.
I know.
You have to keep pulling that information up for it to stay with you.
It takes repetition. Yeah.
Yep, and that's exactly what they do. They let you take quizzes 3 or 4 times.
That's cool.
And you'll get whatever the highest score was.
Nice.
So it's so much. I've learned so much more about the Bible. That can be an argument for indoctrination, but I've learned so much more, like, because there's so many like not facts about the Bible that even Christians think. Like in this conversation, we're going to talk about like hell and heaven. There's so many things that Christians get so wrong, in my opinion, about heaven and hell. But because that's just what they were taught, and they never critically studied the scriptures themselves, and never thought for themselves, hey, this doesn't actually make any sense if the way this is. So if we're gonna go into the conversation,
sure.
A lot of people think that hell is a spot where God is not in whatsoever. It is solely domained by the devil, Lucifer figure, where he is in charge and he's telling everybody to, he's torturing people for God in some aspect, or torturing him because he's just that evil or whatever. That makes zero sense to me whatsoever, because when Lucifer falls from being an angel, he like defies God, or as the story goes, why would God then give him a position of power over his creation in any standard of, you know what I mean? It makes zero sense to me.
Yeah,
why he would do that, because the whole purpose of God is that he is completely sovereign, completely over everything, and he's omnipotent, all powerful, omniscient, being everywhere. Or is it all-knowing? I'm forgetting my omnis. We can say he's all-knowing.
I get what you're getting at. Yeah.
All powerful and all that stuff. So he has to be within. Omnipresent
Yeah.
is all everywhere, and omniscient is knowing everything. That's right. So if those are the qualities of God, he has to be in hell. He has to be involved, and so the way I think of hell is that we have the Imago Dei. Do you know what that concept is?
What is it? Remind me.
So it's that we're made in the image of God.
Okay.
So we have like the attributes, like some of the like the creativity, some people go as far as to like the look of what God is, both male and female. And then there's like the thought process, the consciousness, the soul, and all that jazz. So what I believe to be hell
Hmm.
is that the Imago Dei is taken away from us.
Well, what do you mean?
So our soul, our creativity, we just become we don't we our image, like if we're considered to be image bearers of God,
Right.
that image is torn away from us, and that's why we feel so empty and tortured because we are inherently incomplete
So,
of our creation.
so does that mean you're saying like when you die, that
Like if we
if
go to
you
hell,
go to hell, then but like in general, then do you still have the same form? Because you're talking
we
about
will
the image of
we wouldn't know.
So,
You know what I mean? Because I'm not saying that I know exactly what it's like, but that's what would feel correct to me because it's if God is everywhere, God has to be in hell. He has to be around it, but we just wouldn't feel his presence. We wouldn't feel because I
so what is that existence then? Like I know it's a godless existence from what you're telling me,
yes.
but what is that? Where is that? What does it look like?
I,
I have so many questions.
Right. It's just one of those things that we just can't comprehend because it for a Christian worldview, we are already in that presence of God, so we have no idea what it's like to be outside of that.
Okay.
So it's very heavily dependent on our own worldview for sure. But so that's why it's hard to answer because we wouldn't know that. Because in the Bible, it's written that every soul knows the law is written on every soul, or something. It's in Romans. I wish I knew my scriptures better, but I know for a fact it's in Roman that like the soul is where kind of God, the soul, spirit, kind of lives in.
Right. Okay. So you're saying like you die, your soul lives on, but if you follow the heavenly path, then your soul lives on with God. As to where if you don't,
It's
then
detached from His
okay,
presence.
and that's eternal. Then
That's eternal.
that's okay. Okay. It's just hard stuff to wrap your brain around.
It
Whether
is.
we get
It's,
into,
yes.
yeah, I mean, this is a theory within Christianity,
Yes.
basically. So,
Yes.
okay, yeah, I gotcha. Um,
And
yeah, it's kind of hard to wrap your brain around, but really, any of it is, no matter which
Oh,
direction
absolutely.
you take it. Because there are so many contradictions.
there's so many mythos as well.
Yes. But okay, yeah, I kind of see what you're saying. I mean, like, because that's like when I was little, when I was very little, my mom, who was young when I was a little kid, like, was basically just passed down what her parents had passed down to her, and it was that more traditional kind of heaven and hell stuff. It's like if you bust the commandments and don't ask for forgiveness, this is where you're going. I remember I like had a book and it was like made for children, and it had a picture of like of the
Those
fire and
cartoons.
brimstone
Yep.
scenery, and it
Yep.
was just I mean, like, to me that's like child abuse basically, because that is
And no,
traumatizing.
well,
It's traumatizing.
I would agree with you there.
Yeah.
It's all in the way that you teach it. Because there is value in teaching that if you do bad things, you're gonna go bad places.
Right.
There's definitely a value in that. But you can't say, hey, if you steal that cookie, you're going to hell. You know what I mean?
No,
Or
I mean,
if you don't obey me, you're going to hell. That's just wrong.
yeah, I don't know. I just like, and then as she got, we continued to go to church as I got older, but she kind of softened on that, and like it was more like, well, I think it's just like a separation from God, which is kind of like
Yeah,
what you're
yeah.
saying. And then I bought that for a while. I always had questions when I was little. I just didn't ask them. I always thought, well, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense.
Should always
But
ask
this is what the
questions.
grown-ups are telling me, so that has to be right. But then, I became a teenager, and I was still like, I felt kind of lost in it, but I still wanted to explore it more. And I did. And I found that the more I explored it, the more I was like turned off. And I was just like, my critical thinking kept kicking in and being like, well, there are just too many contradictions. And then the more scientific minded I became, the further away I got from it as well, because I start thinking things like this. Well, it's pretty much like a fact that evolution occurs in the animal kingdom. So, like, if we are an image of God or whatnot, is that like, okay, so is that something that like God like hit the button and was like, okay, here's your little microorganism, and over millennia it's going to evolve into a human being, or was it snap Adam and Eve?
Well, here's my answer to that. So, across evolution, there is not a lot of solid evidence for macroevolution, which is species to species. So, like for example, monkeys becoming into humans. I know that's a horrible example because there's common ancestry.
Mm-hmm.
Or I guess a better example from fish to mammal. There's not a lot of solid evidence for that macro evolution. There's a ton of evidence for microevolution where species there's different subsets of species. For example, and there was a study done in London, or well, not a study, but it was found out in London. There was two mosquito populations. There was a mosquito above and a mosquito population in the subways below. And over time, they couldn't breed with each other because they became so different.
Mm-hmm.
And there's of course with the like there's like the moth one that was done with like the white moths versus the black moths and which one survived better.
Yeah,
Survival of the fittest.
Yeah, and there was a thing like the birds on the Galapagos that weren't native.
Canaries, yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, but I think that's the thing. Like macroevolution, I don't even know if that is a thing. Like everything is a microevolution. I just think that sometimes we cannot comprehend how much time has actually passed on planet Earth.
No, that's fair, but the same argument can be said about God. We can't imagine how much, like, because to us as Christians, he's not a part of this timeline. He is transcendent of this time. There's no Big Daddy in the sky. He's this other transcendent being that like this fourth, fifth dimensional being that doesn't even time isn't a thing to him.
Right, and I get that.
So
then
yeah.
then my questions, like the questions that no one will ever have the answer to, like, okay, if that is what God is, then how did God come into existence, if that's what you want to call it? Well, like that's when my brain starts to explode.
That's why it's so the only answer to that is that God is. That's it.
But how do you know that? Is it because somebody told you that and you were taught that growing up? Because I feel like if I was never told that growing up, my mind never would have gone there. I just would have gone about lived my life without ever considering it. You know what I mean? I probably would have thought, wow, I wonder what's out there. I wonder what the meaning of life is and all this. But I mean, that's about as far as it would have gone. You know, I think like, you know, even as like high functioning creatures, our instincts really still rule us to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I feel like if I was never taught that, then I wouldn't have considered it at all.
Right, and here's where the answer gets interesting, because it to like atheists or to, you know, people thinking critically, as some people call it, the answer, the only answer that we Christians have is that it says so in the Bible, which is according to its own word, breathed by God.
But why do you believe that is the case?
It becomes circle reasoning at that point, and that's it's so hard to a foundation, because it's so beyond us.
But it's a book.
It is a book, but
right.
But it says it's written by God.
I know, but anybody can write, this was written by God.
That is true.
And then somebody is going to there's somebody out of the 7.5 billion people on the earth that are going to look at that spiral ring notebook where I write some little verse and this was written by God, and they're going to believe it. And then they're going to tell their friends, and a cult is going to develop around that. I'm not comparing Christianity to a cult.
Well,
but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. But the answer to that is that we Christianity has such a history and such a Have you ever heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's beyond that recently that there was found of like really really old Hebrew scripture just recently was found that had all of the Torah and word for word still to this day translated correctly. So and by the way, like all the prophecies that happened in Isaiah, for example, talking about Jesus and all these things that were to happen 2,000, 4,000 centuries, not centuries, years at that point.
I got you.
2,000 centuries is a
That's
lot
a long
longer time. But all these prophecies that come true, and that it comes to a point where there's so many coincidences that what other answer is there?
I don't know. I've seen a lot of coincidences in my life.
I mean, that can even be
I mean, statistically, coincidences actually happen more than you think they would.
Is that because of God, or is that because of just the way
I think
it is?
That's just statistics.
I don't know, because there's been a way too many coincidences in my life that I've just it feels like there's a plan. It feels like there's a plan.
But yes, but this is where I think people get stuck sometimes. I'm not trying to argue with you to give you a hard time, by the way. This is just an open discussion,
this
okay?
Is fun. I like this.
Yeah. It's really hard for me to think fatalistically, even when things like that happen in my own life, because I'm pretty lucky. I have it pretty good. My life ain't perfect by any means. Got a long way to go. But I'm pretty lucky. I have everything I need. I have people that care about me. There are most of the people who live on this planet do not.
Right.
There is so much suffering. And I have to put myself in the shoes of people who are really struggling. I mean, I've had my struggles.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, for just a recent example, it's been really hard for me to like follow the news about Ukraine because I'm just like, I think about, especially as a dad, I think about what those kids are going through.
Right.
And when something kind of works out in my life where I'm and it's, you know, I kind of look at it like, well, wow, you know, that makes me wonder, you know, like I think about that and I'm like, well, there are a lot more people who are, if I was in their shoes, I wouldn't be thinking that way. I'm just kind of lucky in the grand scheme of things. And it really makes it hard for me there's just so much injustice and suffering. And I don't necessarily feel like I need to have some kind of moral compass that comes from some theological background. I believe in just being a good person. It's very simple. And, you know, nobody is a perfect person.
No, that's something that's taught in Christianity too, is that all people fall short of the glory of God.
Sure.
But there's also many examples in the Bible where people just have it unfair, completely unfair. Like Job, for example. I assume you know the story of Job.
Yeah. I'm a little rusty on this stuff because it was about, you know, it's been about probably 18 years or so since I called it quits.
Well, Job is
but I know the story.
Yeah,
yes.
So the devil basically dares God. I bet you I can force this man to break away from you, and he does all this evil stuff, and still, you know, gains reward. And there is a conundrum of, well, how come God allows this? And like within Christianity, how come God allows Columbine, 9/11, Hitler, Stalin, all these different things that happen? And sometimes the answer is to, like, for example, Pharaoh, right?
Mm-hmm.
God hardens his heart. For what purpose? To show his power and letting his people go. You know, he disseminates the Egyptians through death, plagues, and all these other different things, which recently there's been like scholarly, like historically scholarly evidence that these plagues happened recently they came up with that, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah, and I actually knew that, but then it makes you wonder. It's like, okay,
Did they just attributed that to God, or was that actually God?
yes, or those events incorporated then into more of what the story is
Right.
itself. To you know what I mean? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So in Christianity, we have this belief of original sin, and that everyone is morally corrupt, utterly depraved human beings. That we have a journey to, and that's not to say that everyone's a horrible, god awful person, but it's a journey for us. Like, for example, the kid is gonna steal the cookie. It's the job of their parents to teach them in a correct manner. And you kind of mentioned the moral compass. The problem with atheism is that, what do you base your moral compass on then? Do you base it off society, or do you base it off of a religion? And that's the question, because if you base it off society, then you're gonna have slaves. You're gonna be okay with that eventually, because if you're not taught otherwise.
That's not true. I don't believe that at all.
No,
No, I mean, like
Hitler was okay with, Germans were okay with that, and that was or Stalin, for example, atheist,
yeah. Well, I mean,
atheistic.
yeah, I mean, like 50% of the population is going to fall for fascism every time. History has proven that.
Yeah.
But I think some of us can get beyond that and realize that that's messed up. But I think like it really is, and there are a lot of narcissists that get into power too, which is a thing you see throughout history as well. I mean, sociopathic, narcissistic behavior coming from these world leaders, and that's something that's always happened. They're the kind of people that have an easier time rising to the top because they step on
They're
people.
good, yeah, and they're good at saying stuff.
Right, and they're not bothered by really anything, and can just destroy anybody and not feel bad about it. So, anyway, I feel like I got a little off track there. But anyway, no, I think it's just like, to me, it's just common sense. Like, it's just, we exist. We live amongst each other. Why would you? You're talking about the kid in the cookie jar. Right. That's a kid. You're always going to have bad eggs, for sure.
Yes.
But I think that, I mean, like, human beings actually, I feel like, need to, this is why I'm going to get political for a minute here, hate capitalism, okay? Because human beings need each other in order to excel.
Well, what do you consider, what is your definition of capitalism?
What is my definition of it?
Yes.
Are you about to defend it?
Well, because there's different definitions of capitalism. There's the exploitation of the workers, or there's the simple bartering of trade for goods.
Right. If you want to take it back to the basics, I'm talking about like the American capitalism, basically.
You mean corporatism?
Yeah. So
the corporatism is evil. Yeah, I'll give you that.
Right. Well, it's just, it's all part of the same set of principles, really, but just on a grander scale. But I mean, yeah, like I feel very isolated sometimes because I don't have a lot of family. I don't live close to anyone. Like, people need other people in order to maintain and support, in order to maintain good mental health. And it's just like being good works. Basically, that's what works for a functioning society. Doing the right thing is really what works. Sure, you can have your like group or whatever that's going to be the jerks, and like maybe they'll thrive because they took a shortcut and made someone else suffer for it. Mm-hmm. But in like if we want to have a more peaceful world on a grander scale, it just comes down to people being good to each other.
Yes.
And I think, I mean, obviously that's something that we're going to agree on, and any decent person is
how we do it
is going to agree with that. Yeah, and I don't. Well, all I'm saying is I don't think I need to have like a grander story out there for me to do that. I'm just going to be the best that I can be because why not? Why wouldn't you be? Why wouldn't you be?
Well, I mean, there's plenty of answers to that for a certain lot of people.
Maybe, but those people are gonna be who they are, and I feel like those of us who want to be better all the time, and that's a lot of us, are gonna strive for that. And I don't know. I just don't. I don't need a like something there to tell me, well, you better be this way, or there are going to be consequences. Like I'm not worried about consequences. I just want to like do what works best for everybody.
Fair enough. This is fair enough.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna. I mean, I'm gonna disagree with you, but I'm not gonna vilify you for it.
Okay.
You know
But
what I mean?
why? I want to know why.
Well,
Like,
because it's. I would rather live for a bigger plan than live for nothing.
but it's not nothing. Your life is something.
Well, yeah, but it's the purpose, right? Because I guess you could say you create your own purpose, but it's more of it's because within the view of Christianity, you're in this view of good and bad, and there's this whole story that's going on before you and in the background and all the time that's going on,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the matter of making life better for other people, which is kind of the same thing you're thinking about, but I feel like it's more it's more it tugs at the human heart more than just having nothing, right? Because when somebody has no purpose, they go really down into the spiral and down into the dumps.
Well, I think you that depends because I don't think I have like a bigger purpose beyond my life. Do I feel like I'm this I mean my life I like I was born, I exist, and I'm doing the best I can with what I got, and really with no vision that I'm going to get anywhere beyond death because of what I do now. I would rather leave the world a better place, than it was than when I came into it. I'm just, like one drop in the bucket, but um I don't know. I don't really need that. And there was a time in my life when I did, and that's when I was into the Christianity thing more, like back in my like teen years or early. Well, yeah, I guess it was probably about 20 when I kind of started to drift. But I just don't. I don't know. I don't feel like I need a grander purpose. I think I've come to a point where I've just accepted that I feel like this is what it is, and I'm good with that. And why not make the best of it? Have a good time while you're here, and,
Right.
and be a good influence. And I have a son, and I don't believe that any of us
I
have
really
more.
hate to cut you short, but I really have to go to the bathroom.
Oh yeah,
We're gonna take a small break here.
I'll hold that thought.
Yeah, we'll hold that thought. We're gonna oh, gosh, I wish I had some non-copyright stuff we could play. Well, we'll play some stuff from the older uh some older stuff, and then we'll get back to you guys.
master plan. I believe in the way things fall. I believe in the way your cookie crumbles. I believe in gravity's spiral. I believe in the river's wild meander. I believe in the path of a rolling stone. I believe in the mad dog's want and wander. I believe in the ramble of a withered crown. Chaos is my friend. Chaos is my friend. Chaos is my friend. And it runs around the bend. I believe in the capricious play of love. I believe in the dance of the dusky wind. I believe in the ways of senses waking. Don't believe in sin. I don't believe there are mistakes. I don't believe in meant-to-bes. I do believe in the twisting trail of a ever-changing destinies. Chaos is my friend. Chaos is my friend. Chaos is my friend. And it runs around the bend. Chaos is my friend. Chaos is my friend. Chaos is my friend. And it runs around the bend. Gravity's spiral. I believe in the river's wild meander. I believe in the path of a rolling stone. I believe in the mad dog's want and wander. I believe in the ramble of a weathered crone. Chaos is my friend. Chaos is my friend. Chaos is my friend. And it rhymes around the bend again. Chaos is my friend. Chaos is my friend. Chaos is my friend. And it rhymes around the bend. And it rhymes around the bend. And it rhymes and it rhymes and it rhymes and it rhymes around the bend. And it rhymes around the bend. And it rhymes around the bend. And it rhymes 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 around the bend. The end. This night, on a heart to heart, no words, just a heart to heart. These arms, they wanna hold you tight, not too tight, but oh, just right. These nights, I wanna prove to you something no pretty prose could do. These nights, I wanna leave no doubt, nothing to misconstrue or to figure out. The objects in the mirror may be closer than they seem. the dream. Just living the dream. This night I wanna just forget all obstacles that we had ever met. This night I wanna just fall in and let the world go and do its bit. Though I know you're not what lies in between. Here and living the dream. Just living the dream. He said a penny for your thoughts, 'cause you're a million miles away. I think oh not so far as that, 'cause you don't know how close I came. Don't pinch me now, I'm gliding down a whole beam. Just dreaming the dream. Living the dream.
All good.
This night I want a heart to heart, no words. Just a heart to heart this night.
Whoops, my bad. I thought I was getting rid of whoopsies. Anyway,
You can edit the breakout for
yeah, I can
Spotify.
edit a breakout for Spotify anyway. Sorry, I had to dip out real quick. Nature calls. You have to go running. So I was thinking about the conversation in the bathroom, as you do, and and it's you have all these like bigger questions, and sometimes it's really the answers can only be as simple as is that that's just what I believe.
Yeah, I know. I get that. That's how my mom is. One thing I wanted to bring up, though, I can't remember exactly where we left off before, because it was more than 7 seconds, of course. So I
Yeah,
forgot.
right. I was that's a call back and a half.
So I don't remember exactly where we left off.
We left off at a point where you were like, I don't have to live for this bigger purpose because I've got my son, I've got my wife, I've got all these.
Yeah, and even if I didn't
Yeah.
have them, I enjoy playing music.
Right.
And it feels good to be a good person. Like, I think that plays into our natural reward system
Yes.
as animals, to just, feels good to do something good and make somebody else happy. Yeah. But in addition to that, one thing I kind of wanted to circle back around to and just see what you thought about, was like, okay, so as a Christian, how do you view other world religions?
So I would say that first off, I'm not going to discriminate against anybody because we had a whole conversation about that with Cassidy Martin where because we were all made in the image of God, to discriminate against somebody would be defacing the image of God.
It's also just mean.
Oh, it's yeah, but I mean, it's deeper than that. You know what I mean? And because you could just say, well, it's mean, but somebody who's gonna be like, well, I don't care if I'm mean. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I like to bring it to a deeper aspect than that. then well, it's just mean. You shouldn't be mean because people are gonna be like, I don't give a crap. So I like to bring it to that kind of level deeper. But yeah, I don't like being mean. That's another thing. I don't like being mean. I mean, you know me. I don't like being mean.
Well, I know. I mean,
I'm not
yes,
mean at all.
I know you're pretty open-minded, I think, and willing to talk about this stuff. And I mean, you hang out with a bunch of heathens at open mics,
Right? Yeah.
So clearly, you're not that offended. But,
No, I'm not.
I mean, I think it's good for someone with your belief system to be a part of that and be open-minded about it. Really, because it can be enlightening in some ways.
Oh yeah, and it has been. That's not to say that I'm always feeling attacked because I'm not feeling attacked. And even though you're criticizing me, I don't feel attacked or offended because
I'm not criticizing you. I'm asking you questions. I have criticisms.
That's fair.
I have criticisms
Okay.
of religion.
Fair.
It's not just Christianity. I have criticisms of religion in general,
That's
like
fair.
organized religion.
Gotcha.
So that's why also I'm asking about, like, what do you think about other religions? Why is Christianity the goat compared to another callback? Why is Christianity
Another
the goat
callback, yeah.
compared to anything else?
Well, because in Christianity, it's only Jesus that says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." Every other religion ends off with saying, "I don't know what the purpose of life is." Buddha said, "I don't know what the purpose of life is." Muhammad says, "It's not me. Search onward." It's
That's because the journey is a part of those religions.
and that's why I feel like they're not as validated in some respects.
And some would argue that Buddhism is almost more of a philosophy, I think, than a.
It's both.
It's
it's
kind
both,
of teeters on that
Yeah.
line, I think.
I respect Buddhism for its philosophy as well, but that's not to say that I completely disregard other religions. There's valuable things you can learn from them. However, it's the fact that Christianity states itself as, or like Jesus Christ, the figure around Christianity, hence Christ in Christianity. It's him who had said, "I am the way, I am the truth." He has this whole Old Testament worth of like prophecy to back him up on it, and there's all of the future prophecy to back him up on it as well, and there's all of this weight, and there's like it's a fringe thought today that scholars don't believe Christ exists, like an actual Christ, not like the quote unquote mythological Christ, but like an actual person named Jesus Christ of Nazareth did exist. That's a fringe belief that he didn't exist.
Oh, I know. I believe he
Yeah.
existed as a dude, and he was probably very charismatic and very good at what
Probably,
he
yeah.
did. I mean,
Probably,
obviously
yeah.
made a big impression,
Yeah,
but it's when we start getting mystical that
the things
they
start
start to
yeah.
lose me.
Yeah, and that's totally valid because it does take a lot of faith or a lot of assumptions to believe in these things. But
This goes back to
Well,
what I was saying earlier,
yeah.
though, about like if no one had ever told you this or taught you this, then what?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know.
Did you ever think about it that way?
Well, I have thought about it that way, but it doesn't matter to me because that's not what happened. I would be thinking in a different reality at that point.
I know, but many people in the world haven't even like
Thought about that.
haven't because they haven't had the opportunity. So where does that leave them?
Well, I don't know. Because personally, I feel like my life would be a lot worse if I didn't believe in Christianity.
But you don't know.
Oh, I know. I do know.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know your whole life story, but
The only reason why I consider myself to be alive today is because I had the backing of Christianity to fall back on,
which is why you feel so strong about it.
and then yeah, for
makes
sure.
sense.
But it's more of because, and there are more spiritual people than I. I don't can there I can there are some people who I consider oversaved, and that these people kind of drive me a little nuts. Where and there are some people like this that also kind of drive me a little nuts. Where they'll say yes, amen, and like everything you say and it drives me nuts. But these people that like deeply feel what other people feel, like empaths, or is that what they're called? Is that what they're called? Like people who feel other people's feelings.
Empaths? Is that what you
Empath,
said?
yeah.
That's empathy.
Yeah, yeah. But like people like make that their identity. Like I am an empath. I feel what you're feeling. Like there are some people who like are legitimately like that, but it's also like it feels so fake to me.
Yeah,
Like,
well, I mean, empathy is a thing that I think any
Oh,
decent
yeah,
person should have.
but there's people who take it to an extreme that I just feel it feels fake to me.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't, and that's the problem with me not being like such a gigantic empath. I feel sympathy and empathy for people for sure, but I don't claim to feel what they're feeling, like some other people would. But but there's more. Getting back to the more spiritual part, there's more spiritual people that really like they know when they're feeling God's presence. They have like this integral reaction to it. I'm not like that. I don't feel the like I know when God's around, but I'm not like directly in tuned to his presence at all times. You know what I mean? Like there's some people who would be like, I feel the presence of God right now, and it's so visceral, and he's right there. His hand is on my shoulder. I'm putting my hand up and I'm putting it on his shoulder. He's right here. And there's people like that, and I'm like, I'm just not like that.
Yeah,
I can
I
see
think
his
that-
presence.
right. I think people can really fool themselves into
And yeah,
believing
yeah,
something, though. I mean, the brain is a powerful thing.
It is.
Despite the fact that I saw a meme the other day that kind of made me laugh, that said something along the lines like the brain is just meat with electricity running through it. but I mean that explains a lot of the weirdness of life, for sure. But the mind is very powerful, and I think sometimes underestimated even.
Yes, I agree.
And people can really make themselves believe wild things, which is why cults exist.
Yeah, no,
This is
you're
why
right.
half of America voted for Donald Trump. You know, it's like it's that
Well, the same
kind
could
of.
be said about the half that voted for Joe Biden.
Well, I'm using Trump as an example because that essentially is a cult, right?
I don't know if I agree with you on that one, but we can skip over that.
All right.
For now.
Well, we'll get next episode. We'll get
Next
into a
episodes.
political discussion. My point is that I think some people just like have physical experiences that they attribute to something spiritual that are actually just physical experiences. You know?
Fair.
Yeah, and human beings are always looking for an explanation for the gaps in the knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
That has been a thing throughout history, where I think a lot of like religion comes from. Like I feel like that these are human beings
Mainstream cults.
trying to explaining the parts of existence that they don't understand, because we have a desire to understand.
Yes.
And as we've progressed as a society, we have understood more, and will continue to understand more until the world ends or whatever.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
some of us escape and fly to another planet.
Even then, the journey continues.
Then you want to talk about other planets? Then, like, how does that factor into your belief system? If the universe is like never ending, and there are obviously other, I think that there is other life out there because statistically it just makes sense. I mean, there's so many stars. You have a solar system around each of those stars. You have a planet that has the right kind of conditions for life. Then boom, there's life, right? So.
Well, I'll tell you what.
They don't know about Jesus.
Well, you're right, and that's if we find other life, then that's going to be a big contender for like the fall of religion, at least in humanity's view. I would agree with you 100% that would be a catalyst, unless they came with a Bible of their own. which would be really that'd be kind of funny, honestly. If I think that'd be hilarious, but because I like that stupid, that like completely estranged, ridiculous humor.
That would be bizarre.
That would be bizarrely ironic and extremely hilarious. But for in regards to creating other planets, it's there's a lot of theories on how God created the universe. There's like old Earth, young Earth, and there's just the literal 6 days. The but who in order to make Earth, does because if God made this universe, He made all the laws of physics and like the thermodynamic laws. Everything has an opposite reaction. Whatever's law, I can't remember them off the top of my head. But he made that universe and he has to act within those rules. So who is to say that the Big Bang wasn't just God making the universe? You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, no, a lot of people say that.
Yeah. So it's just a matter of in order to create the Earth, he had to do the Big Bang, and so that way it follows a logical path. And the same can be said about, and who knows? Maybe he just made it look like it took a long time, but in fact it just took 6 days because he's all powerful, all being, whatever. One argument that makes me mad is when people are like, well, why can't just God make a circle a square? But that's not logically consistent.
Well, I mean, who would ever wish for that?
Right, exactly. Yeah, right.
I mean, of all the things you're going to ask for,
right, exactly. And I'm like, that's your best argument you could come up with as well.
That's but like getting the genie from the lamp and ordering a pizza.
Right. Right. Exactly. It's like you could ask for one of the most fun physics facts that I know is that interaction is changed by observation. Have you ever seen this study?
Oh, like perception?
No. Like, so there was this experiment, that's what it's called, with lasers. One of them was unobserved, and one of them was observed by like an actual human being or something. And the results changed on with whether it was observed or not observed.
Yeah, I've read about this. It's pretty weird.
Yeah, it's wild, and they interact with like different particles of different ends of this, solar system or even universes. It's wild, and some people are like, some people say this proves we live in a simulation. And I like to say to those people, well, simulation had to be created by somebody, but
aliens. I'm gonna be the hair guy. Aliens.
Yeah, right. I don't understand.
But it could be. To me, it's like that. That to me is just as valid as any religious belief. I'm not saying I believe that by any means, but it doesn't have any more or less validity to me than any other reason for our existence. It's a possibility. You saw the end of Men in Black, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You just don't know.
You just don't know.
You don't know. I mean, I really don't think anybody can say that they know. And that's what bothers me about people when they say, but I know because I can feel it. Well, no, you don't know. Nobody has proven anything. Ever.
And it's not going to be. And the problem is that it's never going to be proven until the world ends.
Yeah, or unless you die, and then there is some kind of afterlife.
I kind of consider that as a world ending as well, because,
but
it's your world.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah,
but I mean, like that's the other thing I have to think about too. It's like, when you're like afraid of death, I don't want to die. I have a life to live ahead of me. Yet I'm still fairly young, but yeah, it's a comfort to maybe think you're going to do something else. But then I'm like, would I really want to stick around in some capacity forever, like eternally? Like that might start to get old.
Well, it depends, because in Christianity, if you go to heaven, that is, what happens is that your body is burnt away. All your sins are burnt away. It's this refining process that is supposed to be really painful, but all your yuck and your guck and your human humanity, like the that yuckiness of humanity is taken away from you, and then you only have the pure joy of like being with God, and it's such a presence that nobody can handle his presence because of just how good he is, and unless he takes a different form. But in that we'll be able to step into his presence without any inhibition,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll be so glorious and so expansive that we'll always be entertained and will always be because he is infinite.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying about the not being able to comprehend that, because that's a point I raise about not knowing myself. Because yeah, but still,
It's all beyond our
like
comprehension.
why? Yeah, it almost brings it back to like, why are we even talking about this? Because because really nobody knows
Nobody
anything.
knows, yeah.
I mean,
it's fun to talk about. I think it's a lot of fun to talk about.
yeah, I mean, it is, and I think it's cool that you would have somebody like me here. Somebody like me, I say that like I'm some awful person, but no, I'm just,
You're a pretty good person.
I think so. I'm not perfect,
I'd say you're pretty good.
but I do my best.
One of the better people I know.
Well, thank you. So I appreciate you bringing me on, and I know this is supposed to mainly be a music thing, but I just thought,
I love talking about other because it all relates back to your music.
yeah, and I mean, like when you asked
You
me,
wrote Postcard from Gehenna.
yeah, when you asked me about the religion thing, I said, well, you know what, I have this song. We might as well, if you want to talk about that, this
Right.
would be a good way to do it, because I know nobody that you've had on yet, from what I haven't heard all of them yet, but I've listened to a lot of them and hasn't really gotten that far into it yet, or had exactly the kind of perspective that I do. So
no one I've had on have we talked about this kind of deeper stuff, or had to. I get maybe Robin might have had your perspective. I don't know. I that's one thing I wanted to ask her. That I forgot to ask her. Like, what were her religious beliefs?
yeah, and I mean, I think a lot of the people that we know from the music scene would, I don't know about a lot, but I think some of them would consider themselves. Some of them probably similar to the way I see things. I believe that.
A lot of them are spiritual.
But I would say yes. That's what I was going to say. A lot of
Spiritual.
people are spiritual. I don't even really know what that means.
From what I've seen, it's a lot of Christianity infused with Buddhism.
Yeah, but I think
Like,
it's
love
like
is everything.
it's just a much more like a laid back liberal approach to everything without so
Yes.
many rules and
Correct.
stuff. Yeah, which is fine. I mean, I can vibe with that, I guess.
If you can vibe with me, you can vibe with that for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, it's been interesting. I haven't talked about this stuff very much with anyone, so it's cool. But circling back around to the song
Mm-hmm.
and the album. So, like, there's a story there. So, I
Right.
recommend, if you've been entertained by this few hours of programming, then go on Spotify, find Ruddy Turnstone, and listen to the Full Moon Carnival album.
That was your
And
concept album, right?
Yes, that's a concept
You
album.
want to get into what a concept album is and the whole idea of that?
Sure. So, a concept album is basically an album, which is a collection of 7 to 15 songs usually, that either have a running theme or, like, I think an album as a whole needs to, like, stand on it. The songs need to be connected somehow. But in the sense of a concept album, it goes even deeper because it basically does tell a story. Like, it can be a progression or it can be a series of stories that are intertwined. Often there are characters that are present throughout the album or pop up on certain songs. In the case of Full Moon Carnival, it's all through the perspective of one person, and it chronicles in less than a half hour.
That's impressive, by the way.
It's the mental. It's like basically this person goes through an episode, and it has its ups and its dips, and then it kind of levels out at the end.
Kind of like a manic episode.
Yeah, so we have I don't want to say a happy ending, but
Probably
peaceful
resolved.
one. There's
Yeah,
some
it's
resolve. Yeah. So I hope that comes across when people listen to it. I know that sometimes my lyrics don't always make it obvious, but I had a vision, and
I'd say
I
you
think it worked.
executed pretty well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, yeah, check it out.
Yeah, Ruddy does a lot of cool stuff. He comes out, like you said, he comes out to the open mics. Do you have any? I guess we're kind of wrapping up now.
Hey, you're the boss.
Well, ooh, I'm the boss. Well, there was one like because you had mentioned that it was almost a reflection on like a mental breakdown that you kind of had with your Jasper the Tourist moniker.
Yeah, it was like during that era,
Do
the
you
late era of that.
do you want to talk about that, or do you just want to?
I can a little bit. I mean, basically, okay. So for the album, when I write, I don't always write from a like this is how I feel kind of perspective. I often just take pieces of things that I've experienced, and then turn it into something else. I like having releases that have themes. It feels weird for me to like just write a bunch of songs that aren't connected in any way and put them on an album. So I've always kind of done that, but this was definitely the most conceptual I've been in terms of a bigger release. But a lot of the songs kind of came from a place where, a number of years ago, I did. I had a manic episode. I had a lot going on at the time. I kind of turned the project into a small band. My relationship with my wife, we had been going through a lot, and at this time, as I was like feeling my most supermaniest, we had split for a while, and
Like divorced or
no, just like separated. Okay. It's a long story. It's a dark story. I don't want to air too much dirty laundry for anybody,
that's
or myself. But it was an experience, and a very notable one in my story. So when I came down from that and started to get back to normal once our son was born and everything, and I kind of like leveled out a little bit, I had some time to reflect on that, and I took a lot of inspiration from that when laying this album out, when coming up with the blueprint for this thing. And I had some of the ideas kind of sitting around anyway, and I was able to like just tie it all together with this story. So it's not like every single song that you hear on the record is actually something that happened to me or is is a precise reference of something in my life. But the inspiration, if that episode had not occurred, the album probably wouldn't exist as it does. Yeah.
No, that's fair. I have a lot of those kind of things. Like one of my exes kind of criticized me. It's like, well, this stuff didn't happen to you. I'm like, well, but some of it did, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, and it doesn't. I mean, that's the beauty of being a songwriter. You can do it however you want. I can completely. I've written songs where I've completely made everything up, and sometimes that's more fun. It's a good exercise in writing and storytelling. And but I do like taking. They say you write what you know, and to a degree, I think we all do that. And you put pieces of your own experience into songs.
Stuff, yep.
But I wanted to do more than just, well, this is what I went through, and blah, blah, blah. So, then I tried to think of like cool visuals and vibes that would create something dark and cohesive. And I think I pulled it off.
That's good.
Yeah.
And they can find that on Spotify?
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's on all streaming platforms, as well as Bandcamp, if you do the Bandcamp thing.
Oh, yeah. Make sure announce that or did that pass already?
Well, Friday? It was just Friday, but you can still, if you'd rather purchase the music, I don't have hard copies, but it does. I don't know if a lot of people are aware of this, but like streaming services don't pay. It's like fractions.
No, they don't. It's cents.
Fractions of a cent per stream.
Yes.
So I almost never get paid from them, and when I have, it's been very, very
It's like
incremental
five.
amounts of money.
Yeah,
I mean,
if that $5.
I think I got like $15 once. So, you know, it's not
It's rough.
not the greatest way
Put
to
it that way.
support artists. Like, so you can buy the digital copies and pay what you want if you're into that. You go on ruddysturnstone.bandcamp.com and pay what you want. Even if you pay $1, that is way more than Spotify is ever going to pay me for multiple plays. So
Yeah, so definitely make sure you support your local band artists
yep.
on Bandcamp.
I mean, streaming does help too. Don't get us wrong.
Don't get us wrong.
It adds up.
It does. Over time, it does add up.
I
for
use
sure.
I use guilty using Spotify just as much as everybody else. But if you
Yes.
like a song from, you know, like if you have some local artists that you know and you at least
Really
like
want
one
some-
of their songs, put it on a playlist. It goes a long, long way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. For like a Spotify playlist, yeah. And that you did that right recently. You put together a local hodgepodge of.
Yeah, I like made a Pennsylvania artist playlist that I will continue to add to. I've just been having trouble finding artists outside of our central region. So
I'll hook you up with some people.
okay,
that
just
I-
send me
that- yeah.
send me links and
I'll
add
I
'em.
can send you some of my stuff that I'm starting to put out.
Yeah.
But with all that said, I think it's about time to call it wraps. I feel like we've
This has been a long one.
this has definitely been a longer one, yeah. And a really fun one, I think. What do
Yeah.
you think?
Yeah, it was a good
Yeah.
time.
All right. Well, with that said, this has been Corey Rosen of the Story Podcast with Ruddy Turnstone, and with that said, everybody, I hope you have a very good night.
Goodbye.
Bye.